Let me just.
Okay, welcome, Lady Ariana, to the Biodigital Convergence Transhumanist Report. This is part two. So thanks very much for giving us of your time. I really appreciate kind of mining there, like mining your mind and drawing out some of that intelligence and wisdom with respect to what's going on, in Iran, in the Middle East. Like we desperately need thinkers like yourself educating like people that really don't have much of an understanding whatsoever about what's really going on. And especially like also like how Islam plays a large factor in what's going on, with the political dynamics of the Middle East. So yeah, once again, welcome to the show, Lady Ariana. Thanks so much for being here again. So let's get started. I'm going to share the screen here right away. And we'll get into our topics of discussion here. We have around 15 questions to review, and there's four main points too. This is the Substack article that's going to highlight some of her points of wisdom in today's discussion. So, yeah, basically, we're going to focus on like the history of the unholy Islamo-Nazi alliance. Like this is a big thing right now too, with all the pro-Nazi stuff, all the Jew hatred going on right now, and we're really going to take a good look into, what's going on with in the history too behind this Islamo-Nazi alliance. Because of course we all know like Hitler absolutely despised the Jews, and there's a huge portion of radical I call them, jihadists anyway, that absolutely, yeah, want to see the total annihilation of Jews worldwide. So, and then another point of interest here was the Wheel of Mitra, and basically how like Hitler and the Nazis hijacked um, the Wheel of Mitra, which is an Iranian symbol, but it's been transmuted into this Nazi swastika. So I want to talk a little bit about that too. And I look at Ariana here as really a catalyst for paradigm shifting change. And it's not just her too. There's like the quality of intelligence and thinking coming out of the people of Iran, like the free people of Iran, is just incredible to me. And it's really struck me and it's really drawn me close. Like there's definitely a close bond too, also between I call them the Lions of Iran and the Lions of Israel too. Really interesting thing with that marriage too that just came to my mind too. Pahlavi's daughter and a Jewish man. Really interesting to me. That's very symbolic, very powerful. So again, welcome to the show, Ariana. Would you like to say anything for your introduction? I mean, you are obviously a deep, intelligent thinker with respect to everything Aryan. We can also say that. So, welcome to the show. Any first thoughts you want to share with us?
Thank you, Tom, for inviting me once again, and thank you for all your nice and very deeply moving, words that you speak out over me and over our nation, basically, and to give me the platform to speak about some of these very daunting issues and um, unpack them a bit more historically. And there's, of course, a lot to say also about the marriage that you just spoke about. I'm
Yeah,
really
absolutely. Yeah,
thrilled.
yeah. Comment on that. We can start there. It just came to my mind. So, yeah, yeah, share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it was very, I already knew that she was engaged with him, so I knew that, but to see such a marriage coming about right about when we are talking about war between Israel and Iran, and
Hmm.
everyone speaks about Iran, of course, and not about the Ayatollahs and the regime. They keep saying Iran, and that would have been correct if that was Iran's ideology or a majority of Iranians, just like the Ghazinians, for instance, were against the Jews. But the opposite is the truth, and the Iranians, majority of Iranians, do not want this regime, hate this regime, deeply hate this regime, and have very different lives. As you saw in that video, maybe also of the Pahlavi dynasty of Princess Noor, basically that's how the Iranians live: work hard, study hard, play hard and party
Yeah.
hard. That's basically, especially when it comes to science and evolving and progress, that's their thing. And they literally have nothing to do with this whole jihad and this Arab colonization and right now if you look at yani if you compare it with 20 years ago, it's like they have changed so much that if you go to Iran and you see the youth, you would think you're in America or you would think you're in Europe, and you would
Mm.
not understand what's going on. And that is the face that people don't see. So I'm so glad to see that now people somehow via these um, sudden beautiful connections also get to see a side of Iran that they usually don't see. But at a deeper level, if you look at the Pahlavi dynasty and you see this is the first time that in the because the Pahlavi dynasty is not obviously a very old dynasty. It started with Reza Pahlavi and then Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, which was the late Shah. And now we have the, again, another Reza Pahlavi to make it complicated, who's the prince, an exile prince who lives in the States right now. But you see the first time that they were able to basically choose their own partners, and then you see that you have such a love connection between a princess, a Iranian princess with a Jewish, very Jewish, also because he's an activist for Judaism and for for uh against anti-Semitism and all these issues. To see that bond, it's beautiful, and also I
Yeah.
hope this will be a connection that will change the story for us. So we are all excited to see, and I see a lot of Jews also reply to these posts, and they are so psyched about it because we had Queen Esther, of course, who married is a big word. Yeah, she was unfortunately a concubine of Khashayar Shah, and well, basically she saved the Jews, right? And now we have another Jew entering the Iranian dynasty, so it's exciting, of course, for me as someone who's
Uh,
a Zionist.
yeah. Absolutely, 100%. It's very the symbology behind that is powerful. I would say it's very prophetic, and oh, it's very significant. 100% with to me what God's doing. That I mean, most people can't. I would say don't really understand, but yeah, there's all these little that's a very significant thing that's occurred here. So yeah, no, thanks for the comments on that. And okay, so one thing. I just want to emphasize we're going to have 15 questions, but we also kind of blend that into four main points, right? Like so of course we on part one we did discuss a little bit about Nazism and Islam, but point number one is going to be a little it's predominantly about the unholy alliance between the two, and how they've linked up, and you're seeing this whole resurgence today, all over social media, especially if you're on X, right? I mean, you see this, it's just rampant. Like
Right.
I follow people that are on the extreme right side and then the opposite, if you will, in terms of the thinking and the perspective. So yeah, I have a very interesting bird's eye view of it. So what can you briefly say like about that? What is going on there? And also, like that ties into a little bit of point number two, with the history being like the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, they forged a relationship with Hitler. So I kind of would like to just hear your comments on those 2 points right off the bat.
Um, because if we go through the questions, we basically come in the end we come to Hitler because it's a timeline, right?
Okay,
Because if I would start to
sure.
answer, yeah,
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, that's perfectly fine.
because otherwise we
And
have to go upside down because I will stop at Hitler.
yeah,
It will
no, that's
eventually.
that's fine. Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. And that's kind of like how we want to run the show anyway, is just with a good flow. And yeah, like okay, so we'll get back to that right at the end. No problem. And then yeah, we'll highlight point number three and point number four. Point number three is kind of like like a little bit out of place for today's discussion, but
Point number
Basically,
what?
how the Nazis, yeah, stole the Aryans' wheel of Mitra and transmuted it into the Nazi swastika. Like before I'd met you, I had no real idea. I knew there was a little bit of history there with East Indians with the symbol, but I had no idea actually that it really goes all the way back to the Iranians until I met you and had some discussions with you. So it is really interesting when you mentioned about how, the Nazis kind of took that and branded it for their own purposes too. So yeah, and point number four, of course, too, is to do with Trump, right? Trump's kind of been like a little bit back and forward now, and I think he's kind of waking up a little bit to, that whatever the Ayatollah there's going to say is, you can't make a deal with guys like this, and his position with the Islamic regime, in Iran, and also the Qatari government. So I'd like to get a little bit on that, so. But I think we'll dive right into question number one. And yeah, I think these points are all going to kind of draw out within that structure there. So let's take a look and see what that is here. So, number one. So, if Islam began with a group of illiterate desert tribes, how did it grow into such a powerful force that conquered empires and reshaped the world? So, what do you guys say about that?
Yeah. Basically, Islam didn't emerge from a civilization. It emerged from the margins of a civilization. Yani the original Arabs, as we know them, were not city builders, theologians, or literate scribes. I mean, like even their own scriptures is that's the narrative is that Muhammad basically came into this environment where you had a bunch of tribes who were illiterate and they were committing all sorts of crimes, and he unified them, and he himself was an illiterate. So they were tribal nomads from the Hijaz and from the regions, groups like Quraysh, Aus, and Khadra, who lived like literally on the sidelines of empires like the Aryan Empire, you call the Persian Empire,
Hmm.
and the Byzantine Empire. So they had no written scripture of their own, no empire, no centralized religion. And to take it a notch deeper, the term Arab itself derives from the basically from the Assyrian and the Aramaic and the Akkadian roots simply means desert dwellers. Um, and it's any not a sign of a civilization or achievement, but of a marginal survival, right? So how did Islam rise then? What Muhammad did was revolutionary, not because he was reviving a glorious Arab past, but because he manufactured a pan-tribal identity where there have been only fragmentations. And basically, um, that's the story that we have heard. Yani, from the Muslims themselves, we have heard that it was Muhammad and his revolutionary idea, and also what God, like the Allah that they believe that Allah is God, and that the message of Allah and the Quran itself caused these these illiterate tribes, to then unify and become such a strong force. But that just is, it doesn't make any freaking sense, because how could um a bunch of look, when I'm talking about Quraysh, or when I'm talking about these tribes, these were not tribes who lived together in union or whatnot. These were not tribes who had even the same ideas or even the same fates as each other. They were constantly at battle with each other, murdering each other, stealing from each other. And because they lived in a region where there was no water, because back then there was no Saudi Arabia or whatnot. The Gulf states that you have right now, these were all the Persian Gulf states. So that little region in the middle, where there was literally no water. That's where they came from, and it was very
Yeah.
hard to live there, right? Um, so it's just crazy to imagine that these people could then go against the Aryan Empire, who was uh, constantly fighting with the Roman Empire, and they were extremely organized. Their military was very advanced. It was just crazy to imagine such, and it is, of course, crazy and illogical to think such a thing. So it was basically, um, and I'm not proud about about this. I didn't even know this before. I really thought the standard narrative of the historians is that, um, yeah, this ideology came from that place, and then it's expanded. And the standard narrative of the historians is also either it's because, uh, well, the Romans and the Aryans were fighting constantly and they were tired, or from the Christian perspective, it's yeah, they sinned. So yeah, the Christians were sinners, and therefore God brought this wrath upon them, and basically, send a bunch of barbarians to show them that they're nothing, and that's what the Christians thought. And of course, the Muslims themselves think it's from God, right? But no one asked the Persian ever or an Aryan ever what they thought. And when I started reading, and I'm actually reading a book by Jason Reza Georgiani, he's an Iranian scholar, and I really want to credit him. uh, I started understanding that, hey, this whole religion was basically, Yani, I'm not going to all the other questions. Maybe I just should stop here and then let you ask the other questions because I went a bit off script. But
That's okay. That's okay.
um, yeah, that's something that I have. Like, I just start thinking and then I go to all these other
Yeah,
questions, and
that's okay. I mean, that's basically how the mind works, right? When you're speaking words. And I mean, to me, just to tie back into what we were originally talking about, with how it began, because I understand too, it really began in Mecca. And essentially, actually, the Meccans at the time, I think, rejected Islam, and it wasn't until I think they pretty well kicked him out, and it wasn't until like he formed a military group in Medina, right, that Islam started to spread by conquest. Because to me, everything with Islam is
no, it
is
wasn't actually like that.
no.
It's no, yeah, and it's not like they were some sort of like military organized people, and then they started spreading, and then became bigger and bigger. Actually, it started with, unfortunately, the Sasanians, who were, yani, one of our empires, who had inner, yani, they had inner struggles. They tried to defeat each other, and they came up with this whole thing as a plot to defeat the Sasanians who were in power. And they thought we can use these Arabs, these desert dwellers, which both the Romans and the Persians did occasionally, because and still still it happens, and it has happened after that as well, by the way, by the Anglos when they wanted to defeat the Turks, because they are tribal, and they are armed, and that's, a thing that you can use if you want to use them as a global empire. You don't care about them, you don't care what happens to them, you just promise them a few things, and then you use them as extra soldiers. So basically, it's actually way more different than we have learned, uh, and the standard narrative was. I mean, like, um, the Arab didn't civilize the world overnight. The civilizational muscle came later, and it wasn't Arab. Once Islam expanded, it colonized knowledge. It also then slurped all these other um, uh, peoples and ideas, from the Aryans to the Jews to the Christians, and then they took all these generals, they took all these scientists, they took all these people, and then that's why they could expand like this. It wasn't like the Arabs themselves could do all of this, but also they didn't even come up with Islam. I didn't know this, but Islam is not written by Arabs. Islam is unfortunately written by Iranians. If you look at all their main text, so Bukhari, the Bukhari collections, or all the other collections, all Iranians. So I never knew this. I always thought and I hated it. I always thought what they attacked us. And yani, the Arabs attacked Iranians, they ruined us. And now I found out, hey, this was an illiterate man by his own admission, by his own, not only himself, but also his surroundings. They weren't organized, they weren't disciplined, they were just a bunch, yani, not a civilized people back then there in that region. I'm not saying that they're not civilized right now, but back then, I'm talking about back then. And they didn't come up with any of these themselves. So even their text is written by Iranians, unfortunately, to come up with a counter, sort of like a religion against the Orthodox Zoroastrianism that was in the time of the Sasanians implemented, which was different from the original historical or Zoroastrianism. And the Parthians didn't want the Zoroastrians to come up with, because it was a very different sort of religion. It actually has many of the elements of Islam that we are seeing right now. It's in Zoroastrianism. It starts in Zoroastrianism. Yani it's not in the original Zoroastrianism, but in the later, let's say, perverted one, or the heresy. And that was in the time of the Sasanians. So it was basically a bunch of Iranians who came up. Um, Yani Salman actually was one particular person who came up with these ideas, to tell these people, to then, give them a reason to do this, and they themselves could never come up with any of it. Yani just imagine a bunch of desert people being able to infiltrate an empire like that. I don't know if you have ever seen a map of the Persian Empire back then. It's just most of the world. Yeah, and it's not something you just invade and take over. So it's preposterous to even
But
think that could.
yeah, no, and okay, but that's the whole. What I understand about Islam too. It's kind of like taqiya. It's like yeah, it has to infiltrate from within, right? I mean, yes, okay, there's an outward manifestation of physical war in some cases, but not so much obviously in these days. But of course, what's going on with the Islamization of Europe, the West? I mean, you can clearly see it now with the war going on, in quote unquote Palestine with Israel, right? I mean, you see it like all the it's really exposed itself for what it really is, and especially what's going on in Michigan too. My God, I've seen some of it's just unreal. And they know what they're doing too, right? Like, I'm kind of going off on a rabbit trail here too, but
Me
you
too.
know, well, it is what it is. And I mean, it's definitely caused a concern, uh, and because, yeah, the ideology that these people propagate is not in alignment with Western ideology whatsoever. But they use, it's very parasitical to me because it latches on to the good graces of a host nation and infects it until it can grow. To me, it's very cancerous actually in the way that I
It is. It's
understand.
just like metastasizing, right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It's just on a macroscopic scale, right? I mean, everything is you can look at it the microcosm versus the macrocosm, and I mean even in religion and ideologies that really should have no place in the West. Like I mean, this whole globalist mentality is going to destroy. We're seeing it now, right? I mean, it's sad actually, but we're facilitating it. And I say we, I mean our leaders are actually, you don't even have to invade anymore, right? It's just they're going to facilitate our end step by step. Anyway. But
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
that's a very, very interesting topic, a very deep topic that
Oh
I
yeah.
think we should cover one time, but
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we got through like one, two, and three there pretty well. Well, we did. And then okay,
Well,
now we'll
it's
go.
just like yeah, so basically what I want to emphasize is there was no such thing as Arabs. The standard narrative is okay, there was Abraham, he had two sons, one Ishmael, one Isaac,
Yeah.
and Arabs are from Ishmael. It just totally false. They came up with that whole narrative. It has nothing to do with history. There are 13 generation between between Muhammad and basically Adnan, and then there is nothing anymore. So even according to their own sources, they cannot. It's a folklore story that everyone believed, especially the Jews, because the Jews have mostly lived under them. So even the Jews come up with this each time that he talks to them. They're like, "Yeah, we are cousins." No, you're not cousins. This is a whole made up story. It literally has nothing to do with Abraham. Arab doesn't. So again, an Arab is an exonym that us Iranians and the Assyrians, we have it literally in stone, eh? This is before they were ever they ever came up with this term in the 7th century. We call them that. It's just like calling your neighbors barbarians. That's basically how it was. That's what it meant, right? The people who live
Hmm.
in the deserts, and I just I don't want to just say barbarians. Maybe that's too harsh or something, but it wasn't a nice thing because they weren't living in a nice way with each other.
Well,
Uh,
yeah.
so so that was what it meant.
Hmm.
Arabes, we said Arabes basically, and the Romans actually eventually even had a province called the Arab province. So it means something in Aramaic, it means nothing in their own language. So basically, when Muhammad came, he slapped this term, borrowed it from the people who called them that, and slapped this term on these tribal desert people and just call them Arabs. So there you also already see that there is no connection with the Jews whatsoever. There's no claim to the land. There is no connection there. It's just a story. Just like the whole Palestinian thing is a story that went rogue. This is also a story that went rogue. So
Hmm.
again, it comes from the Aramaic and Akkadian roots, meaning nomads at best, desert people, and at worst, of course, barbarians and stuff. In pre-Islamic literature, even in the Quran, Arabs were often portrayed as backward. The Quran itself literally says Bedouin al-Arab, the worst. Yani, in the Quran, they call it the worst in disbelief and hypocrisy. But this is in Sunnah at-Taba, I think 97. From the Quran directly, right? So how did they go from being fragmented despite French population to the rulers of a massive empire? Um, so it's a story. It's a story that we have been hearing, and it doesn't make sense. Historically, it doesn't make sense. And when we understand them more and more, then we can see how to deal with it. But when we believe their own stories, which doesn't make any sense, then we are lost. But when we actually go to history and say, hey, how did this all come about historically, then like you have a better idea how to deal with it also, because otherwise you have to categorize it under a religion that is an Abrahamic religion, which is basically also something that some Anglo priests came up with, and the Muslims at that time they said no, we are not Abrahamic, we have very different ideas, but then they went with it eventually, and now everyone is saying it's an Abraham. We all come under the one umbrella, and that is Abraham, which is just again a made up thing by one Anglo priest. It has nothing to do with Islam. It has nothing to do with that they actually have these shared values or something with Christianity or with Judaism. So yeah, I can go into that more, but if you look at once Islam expanded, it colonized knowledge, the so-called Golden Age, fueled by Aryan Jewish and Christian minds. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad, for instance, was built by Iranians. Key Islamic scholars from Avicenna to Al-Farabi were all Persians. Or more than that, Bukhari. The Bukhari is the biggest collection. I don't know if you have ever heard about it, but literally the Islamic jurisprudence is made in Iran. So even the structure of Islamic law was largely shaped by scholars from former Sasanian regions. So Islam began with illiterate raiders but it took the conquest and absorbed the ancient colonization, any ancient civilization to give it an ancient scholarly philosophical legitimacy. Islam did not create a civilization. It literally um, it was created by the outside world. So that in and by itself sets everything in a different corner, and then we can see at what happened there. That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I mean,
So that means,
you're speaking things that are definitely kind of unique, right? Ideas to consider, right? And I mean, everyone's pushing a different narrative today, right? Like it's just like it's so difficult to know unless you go to whatever source documents you can find. And I mean, it requires a tremendous amount of intellectual effort to even understand history, right? Because people just twist it in the way that fits, their worldview, right? And
but
but
history
it's
is not something like, it's not something that you cannot actually study. It's not, people usually act like history is something, a bunch of people who had a bunch of opinions, and it's sort of like a fluid thing. No, right now you and I are sitting here, we're talking, and
mhm.
this will be history. It happened, right? It needs to be
Yeah.
true also. It needs to be something that is aligned with facts, and it needs to be coherent. It needs to be relevant, so we do have merits on the basis of which we judge what is historical, what not. Otherwise, we can say all these stuff, and that's what the Arabs are used to do. They used to say whatever they want and then force their opinion instead of like give you the opportunity to actually research what they're saying. It's usually
Yeah,
listed to
that's right. I
bunch
mean,
of
that's what a higher level of civilization, like you have to allow criticism. You won't grow as a society if you force the dogma, which, like in probably almost every nation, I think at one point there was probably a little bit of that going on. But I mean, in a good society, I mean, you have to, when new information kind of surfaces and, you're able to prove, certain things to be true, I mean, you have to adjust. And that's one of the biggest problems I see in the world today is just a complete inability to determine what's true, or adjust your thinking based on evidence. That's sums it up to me, but you know, no matter what the
right.
topic is, because people don't want to admit that they're wrong in their thinking, because they're passionate about their position. Well, that doesn't mean that you're right. Just because you're passionate doesn't mean anything. It just means that you're
Right.
passionate, but you could be
Yeah, it's
passionately wrong, right?
that's
So,
definitely said that beautifully.
right?
But it's just like when we have an idea, it becomes our cognitive bias, right? So when
Oh yeah.
someone, it has to do with our brains, and when someone comes up with something that is the opposite of what you have been thought your entire life, it goes against your standard narrative, against your cognitive bias, and then it causes a cognitive dissonance in your mind, and you feel that the information that is brought to you is false because it feels unsafe. The brain
Yeah,
doesn't
that's right.
understand
Yeah.
good or bad. It only understands safe and unsafe. And whatever you're used to, even if I right now like stay up late every night, even though it's bad for me, my body, my brain is used to it and finds it safe and good. And when I want to sleep on time, it will resist because it's not used to it. You're going against the pattern of that you have
Yeah, that's
created.
right. Yeah.
So
No,
basically, we're doing what we are have to do. This whole thing is basically a brain issue that we're not dealing correctly. We're acting like it's only spiritual, but mostly it's about indoctrination. And it's very,
yeah, but
very basic.
you have to have, I'm gonna say, the soul quality fortitude to accept the fact that you basically know nothing, and even the people that seemingly know a lot don't know very much. And I think if you can come to that place in yourself, then you've began, you're on the right path. Because it's it there's only very few people that are, I would say, that are very well reasoned in their position, and can defend their position very well based on facts, evidence, history, and but I find with a lot of these individuals too, they're also very understanding, and they're able to, like, I don't know, address some of the problems that other people experience. But Ariyanâ, to me, everyone chooses these things. I mean, if you just want to stay at the base level and your own ego and your own self-pride, you will never grow. You will never grow. You'll remain in that place for the rest of your life because yeah, like you're unwilling because you're not a logical, reasonable. You don't know how to reason. You don't know how to listen. And we're all guilty of this to some degree. Like my wife would say, we're all hypocrites on a spectrum, and we all need
Right.
to work at narrowing the gap of our own hypocrisy. That's her quote. I think that's a very profound statement because it's narrowing the gap, but that requires effort. It requires recognizing when you're in error, and then you adjust, and but then to me, your soul quality levels up because you've recognized that you have a problem here, okay, and then you've worked on yourself. It's easy to speak about all these things, right? But people don't do the work. Anyway, you know what? That's I'm going to try and get us back on course here, but yeah, that's basically the way if I can simplify the problems with most of us. And you have to, because some people have a tendency to self-destruct when they start realizing how wrong they are. It's like, no, you don't have to self-destruct. It's just that you want to rebuild. You want to rebuild better. And I hate using that terminology too, because that ties into the whole globalist build back better. But I mean, to me, it is a true statement nonetheless. But you need to recognize, where you've gone wrong, and then it's like you level up, right? You level up your game. You level up your reasoning, your intelligence, your knowledge, and it's all about applied
Right.
knowledge at the end of the day too. You could have all the learning in the world, but it's like, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Like you've read 1,000 books, but how are you applying what you've learned, in the real world? Like
And
how, like, yeah.
these are philosophical questions that we can deal with another
Yeah.
time, and they're
Yeah,
very
that's right.
important.
That's right.
They shape who we are, but also how we look at the world, and then the worldview that we have collectively is also very important. So it's when you
Yeah.
don't have solid answers for these life questions, as they're actually called. So origin, meaning, morality, destiny, all these questions are called life
Mhm.
questions. If you don't have any good answers for them, you also don't know how to have a healthy society, which we
Yeah, that's right.
basically are right now a little. So and it's not only dark or something. I mean, if you compare us with 100 years ago, on every possible way, we have progressed. Maybe we are very focused on everything that's wrong right now. For instance, with the Islamic invasion and with what is happening to our minds when it comes
Mhm.
to neo-Marxism and all these ideas. But on when we talk about human rights, for instance, we have never had globally such human rights like for everyone. It's new. Of course, Islamic countries don't have that right now because they have Islamic Sharia, Islamic law, and that is anti-human rights. But every other country that actually goes by the progress of that philosophy, if you will, that the how we should live, how we should treat ourselves, who we are, is actually in a very good place compared to like 100 years ago. But we have a long way to go, and a lot is happening. True, but it's not all dark. And I just wanted to point that out. That
Yeah,
yeah,
I'd focus on the negative. Yeah. No, you're right. You're 100% right. And I think my part is a little bit kind of like watching out for, I would say, some of the forces of evil per se, but you're 100% right. There's lots of good too. There is. Yeah. Um, okay, well, you know what? I want to jump over to question number 7 here real quick because you did mention about like Iranian scholars like and influencing like Islamic thought. And why is that often like hidden and downplayed? You touched on that. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that. And then I'll skip back to number 5 and 6 after. But I know you mentioned that. I never heard that before. But is there anything else you'd like to say further with regards to that question?
number 7, you said, like
Yeah.
about the scholars. Yeah, I think it's very important to actually question. Yeah, but why are we going crisscross against the because we were
The only
very
reason is because I don't know,
Chris.
the way my mind works. Yeah, I guess you
I
know
thought
what?
you were the I thought you were the
Yeah.
organized one.
No, I figured the way my mind works, I kind of jump back and forward from based on I don't know the way my mind works anyway, but we can stick to Number four, is where I think we're at now. If you'd like to just get into that next too, and we can just go four, five, six, seven. The only reason, yeah, like I jump ahead a little bit is if you touch on a topic and then you can kind of elaborate on that. But if we want to keep the flow, we shall keep the flow.
You know why because I basically structured the questions with the timeline of the
Yeah.
events, historical
Okay.
events, and then how they evolved, and then eventually what happened. If I go like, but this question is actually from the beginning, so I can answer Yani the question that you just asked about the
Yeah.
Islamic scholars and stuff, who they were, and how it's actually just a bunch of Iranian scholars. It's I don't know why it's also in question seven. I'm actually a bit
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I jumped down to there. But yeah, no, yeah, that's good. You can give us a little bit more on that, but I've never really heard much about that before, so that's new to me. So
Yeah, that's exactly something that is normally not
no,
discussed.
it's not discussed. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Let me just go to question seven then. So seven, you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the Arabs who conquered the world in the seventh century. Let's just go with the standard narrative. They conquered it. It wasn't set up, but they conquered it because that's what they like to shout everywhere. We were strong, man. We conquered. We conquered. You're strong. That's their whole glory. Um, we're in some ancient noble civilians, as I already said. They were nomad tribes, mostly illiterate and defined by their own environment, not by shared identity. They didn't even call themselves Arab, as I already said. That was something that later was slapped. Yeah, we call them the Assyrians and the Aryans, and the Romans called them Arabs. Whoever lived in the desert, they call them Arabs, right? But they didn't even have an alphabet. Just imagine, like before the seventh century, these people
Hmm.
did not have an alphabet. They have an oral alphabet. Like the people who were somehow connected to the waters, they had like for instance, Yemen had a civilization. They had an alphabet, they had a civilization and everything. Or Petra, the people who live in Petra, modern day Jordan, they also have a civilization because they have water. But yani these Arabs that we are talking about, they didn't. And so it was just like very logical that they just have the any oral language, but not any or alphabet, but not a written alphabet. So it's funny how they themselves forget about these things when they are shouting it with pride. I mean, I was 2 days ago I was talking to an Islamic scholar who got very angry at me. I can show you the print screens. It's just ballistic. You even ballistic on me.
Hmm.
And I was saying these things. I was like, you do understand that everything that you're so you because he kept saying fiqh, and that means in Arabic fiqh means Islamic jurisprudence. He said you don't know how the fiqh works. I said like it doesn't matter if you have a law. The ethos of your law is. For instance, sex slavery, it doesn't matter what you then later come up with to regulate it, to say, well, if you have a sex slave, then don't beat her like this, beat her like that. Don't do this, at least do this. It's a lesser of the two evils, but it doesn't take away from the ethos of it. And then I said, but even that was not even written by you. It was all written by Iranians because you were illiterate. You didn't even have an alphabet. And then he went ballistic. He's like, yeah,
Oh
but the
yeah, I could
Iranians, they
see
were
him.
good.
Yeah.
They were good slaves. They did they listened to their Arab
But
uh, uh,
okay,
masters.
but
I said, what do you?
when you said that to him, now that's a fact, right? Does he know that? Like, did
Yeah,
he
he knows it
counter?
when he got very upset because
See, that's
it's
wrong
in his
because it's
own
like, yeah, like
it's in his own. Yani, it's not even from the outside that I would say, hey, you were illiterate. And in his own book, it says, no, Muhammad was literate. They themselves believe that this man was an illiterate man. So I'm like, well, where does all this pride
Hmm.
come from? You know that Bukhari was
Yeah,
an Iranian. He says yes, but he was working under the Arab masters. So they listened to the Arab masters who told them from God what they have to write down. So I said, like, okay,
right.
so you're right. Your God did not have the ability to teach you how to write, but your illiterate prophet had the ability to go to the neighboring countries and put the sword on their throat and say, write. I mean, like, do you even think about all these topics? And he said, you're brainwashed and you're just hateful. I said, well, at least we were literate. I'd rather be hateful and illiterate than be a
Oh
desert man
man.
who, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
but again, if you don't agree with them, right? I mean, they say it outright. Like I've been listening to what some of the Muslim Brotherhood leaders have been talking about, just openly on memory, right? The Middle Eastern Media Reporting, I think, Institute. Correct me if I'm wrong on the acronym there, but I mean, they're telling you, Muslim Brotherhood leader there, I can't remember his name offhand, but he was just saying, like, they tried to conquer Europe, by the sword. It didn't work, and now it's like they're calling this soft, what do you call it? Soft
jihad.
invasions. Yeah, like
Uh,
this openly, like just openly talking about it.
Yeah, it's
Like,
because right now they are in a position because they have so much, especially in the West, they have
yeah,
so many rights and they're growing
yeah,
by birth rate because they don't have morality. They go with X, Y, and make all these babies, who they
yeah,
do not care for at all. It's babies. They use women as baby machines.
yeah,
They fool women and they also say, oh, it's from Allah. Allah told me that I could have two wives
right.
or three wives, and I've
It's
seen
four. You're
people.
allowed four, I think, in Islam, aren't you? I think
Yeah, you
you're,
could have four, but I mean, like, every time they expand, they, because
oh yeah.
women don't want such stuff, and then eventually it doesn't stop by four. By the way, you can have whatever your right hand possesses, but four is, yeah, the
Yeah, by
nikah for the,
conquest, you can have sex slaves, right? I understand that. If you
yes,
conquer an area, like I remember the Yazidi women that were, I believe it was ISIS, and they refused, you know, to become sex slaves or whatever, so they burned them alive. It was just, I mean, it's just unreal, like the way, the mentality, the mindset, behind some of these men. And of
and
course,
what
when
can
you,
happen to your freaking mind that you can do that to a human being is still like,
they don't
it's
care because they're
unfathomable.
it's because in their thinking it's justified by Allah, right? It's justified because they conquered the region, the women refused, so they killed them. Like this is 6th century, 7th century Islamic conquest mentality. I mean, it's not everyone, obviously, but when you look at how some of these people, like I've been studying this a lot, and I mean, and of course, once you arm this type of individual, this is how they're going to be. Yeah, and they do it, and they're still doing it. Like even in of course Syria, I'm getting. It's just the slaughter of the Alawites, the Christians,
Yes.
and I mean it's like when you empower, and now all of a sudden Jelani's in a business suit. It's like and you're willing to like I can't understand.
Now we
Like
are
we are,
seeing it with our own eyes. This time we are seeing it with our own eyes how it
yeah,
goes. I mean, like, he
and
had
they
a
do nothing. I mean it's just
10
unbelievable to
million
me.
bounty on his
Yeah,
head by the CIA, and right now
yeah,
he's shaking the hand
yeah,
Trump is shaking his hand and he's
yeah.
calling
He
him
should not.
handsome. He's very handsome. Who fucking cares that he's handsome? Like, what? Okay, he's handsome, and
Do
then
you
he's
th do
still
you think
murdering
he's
all these
handsome?
people.
Do you think he's handsome?
Well, he's not bad looking, but I just when I look at him, yeah, compared to all these other jihadis before him, like if you compare him with Assad, who had no
Yeah.
chin and looked really weird,
Oh yeah,
okay,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
compared to Assad, yeah, fine, okay, he's handsome.
Okay.
Okay, well,
All
and
right, we got
who
that covered then,
cares?
right?
It's like,
So because it's
who
sort of like yeah, let's
cares?
vote for Justin Trudeau in Canada here because he's hot, right? And he's going to
Because, yeah,
legalize
because he's
marijuana, right?
charming, because he's
Yeah, that's
handsome.
right. Yeah, that's the mentality over here. But then over there, it's like, oh well, he's a good-looking jihadi, so it's fine. He's got a suit on now, so Whatever, it doesn't matter what he does, right? We'll work with
But
him.
that gives you an idea of the
Yeah.
level of the people who are actually listening to this. And because I
Yeah.
see it, especially on Facebook, I see so many people, whatever Trump says, yes, yes,
Oh yeah.
yes.
I
I'm like,
know.
what are you delusional? This man just committed genocide on Syrians. Literally, his hands are dripping blood.
Yeah.
Who cares how he looks and how he stands there with the suit? No one cares. But this is how easy you can fool people with a suit, apparently.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's hard to know, right? That's yeah, getting back into when we're our point number four there on Trump and even the Islamic regime and the Qatari government, yeah, like accepting. I'm not sure whether he actually did accept the aircraft or not. I mean, but originally to me, it's like a Trojan horse. It's like honestly, I really hope Trump really educates himself. I mean, maybe he knows. To me, if he knows and then he's still doing these things, it's worse. Okay, in my mind. But if he's just kind of like operating at the surface level and like there's different things going on in people's minds, right? It's very hard to really know because somebody said, "Oh, of course he knows." Well, I'm not quite sure, right? I mean, what he knows or doesn't know. So I just look at what he does, and it's like based on like knowing people like yourself and there's a lot of Israelis too that are talking about all this. And Dumasani, he's like that African Christian pastor. I really respect him, man. He's doing a lot of good things, but he's openly talking about all this stuff too.
The historian, you mean?
His name's Dumasani. I think Washington is his last name. I mean, you
Oh,
know
I don't
what?
know.
I don't know too much. I follow him on social media there. He does a lot of work and he talks about the slaughter of Christians too, like in Africa, what's going on there, right? Like like how the jihadis are just butchering people down there too. And but he has a very active role, right? He's doing a lot for people, and I really respect his words. And he's warning, even though he supports Trump, but he does not agree with like this whole Qatari thing. And he speaks about that very openly. Very intelligent man, very very smart. And that's the thing. Just because you support an individual doesn't mean you support 100% of what the guy does, right? It's sort of like in a relationship, man, it's like, yeah, we're together, but yeah, we don't agree on everything. It's sort of like, when you're working with the government. I mean, okay, I agree with them on like 75% of these policies, but yeah, the rest of it, I don't agree at all. And here's why. I don't know, that's life, right? I mean, so
Right.
yeah, I think we need to watch out, like even if you do support Trump on certain things, there's certainly areas where I absolutely do not support him. That's yeah, that's my take. So,
Yeah, you
but
know, it's very easy to, and I see a lot of people, they continuously say, but Trump is so naive, but Trump doesn't know, but
yeah, I know
but
you think he knows, right? Yeah.
I mean, like, come on. He's a
Yeah, I know
super
he's yeah,
smart human being. Like, he's very educated. Just
yeah,
because someone, I can, right now, the way I speak with you is different than the way I write, right? I could write
yeah,
differently. I can speak very simply. Doesn't mean that when I speak simply, I don't, I'm not smart. So it's like, the people who are so simple, and they also they only look at the way he conducts himself, or the way he speaks and thinks, oh, okay, he must be very dumb and stupid, or very naive at best when
yeah,
they love him. But hello, he okay, for instance, Trump himself was the one who said that America should not accept anything from Qatar because Qatar is a terrorist state. He himself issued, and I have a literally video of Trump standing there in his first
yeah.
time, that
This is
he
good.
was the one who was addressing this, and he was the one who was angry about it. He said we shouldn't accept anything from, and that's the right attitude, because they're terrorists, and the
Yeah.
money that comes out of the ground that they don't work for, he should not take that. It's just ridiculous. And now he's doing exactly what he said we shouldn't do. So it's look, we
Why?
yani,
Tell me why. Why do you think he's doing that?
no, I have my theory. I don't know exactly if my theory is right, but I can provide you. My
I
theory
mean,
is, I
obviously there's money involved. I get that. Do you think that that's the primary motivator? Do you think it's, this is all about business deals and, is that really all it's about? Money?
it's it. Basically, yes. Basically,
Okay.
yes. But it's
Yeah.
not, it doesn't start with Trump. So it was that's why you see a sudden change in his behavior towards the Jews, towards Bibi. The way he's talking now is different than before he went to Qatar. So it is something that he apparently didn't plan like this. But
Yeah.
what you do see, what we see like on paper is that Steve Witkoff is the one who actually accepted bribe because why did a lot of people find Trump safe because he's a billionaire and they thought, okay, you don't, a billionaire, he's already set, right? You cannot bribe a billionaire. And if you compare him like with Obama or people who didn't have any money when they came into office and now they're millionaires themselves, you think, okay, this is a businessman, he's very, very wealthy, so he's not going to be bribed. That was one of the things that the people thought about Trump. I just remember these dialogues with
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
who
that's right. I
continuously said
mean,
that
I agree.
Trump is
Yeah.
safe, Trump is a billionaire. But Steve Witkoff was not a billionaire, right? I don't know if
Yeah.
you know Steve Witkoff. He was
I
not a
don't know
billionaire.
much about him. You know more than I do, clearly. So,
So Steve Witkoff is like the one who started accepting huge sums of money from Qatar, and Qatar, this is Qatar's signature. Qatar always does that. They find the people in the
yeah.
administration next to the one who is ruling, who are the weakest, and then they bribe them with huge sums of money that even
Yeah.
I by myself thought if that was offered to me, Eiler, yeah, well, what would you do? How would you deal with that? How would you deal with
Yeah,
so much
that's
money?
the right way to think.
I don't
And
know how I would have reacted, but he went for it. And when you start accepting money from Qatar like that amount of money, and right now everyone is on top of it, so he stopped doing and he gave up his whole business. Yeah, but it's just fake. Of course, it's just legality. He gives up his business right now, but of course, whenever he wants to go back to it, right? So it's just a formality thing. But that's how it started. And if you hear Steve Witkoff speak about the Qataris, they're not terrorists at all. These are very nice people. He literally goes full blown. His whole
yeah.
face goes red when he is speaking about them. I'm like, okay, that must be in a lot of billions that you were offered. So I do think that it was via Qatar, yani via Steve Cobb, that Trump went this route because Trump is actually pro-Israel. Like his heart is
Oh
with
yeah.
Israel.
Yeah.
If you look at
100%.
if you
Yeah.
look
He
at
is.
his son-in-law, if you look at his ideas, because it aligns also with his worldview. So it's not like he doesn't like Islam. Like if you know Trump, you know that but in his heart, he doesn't like Islam. But
Well,
now he's being very
yeah.
politically correct and he's
Well, he
being
just
very
did that
nice to
travel
them.
ban, right? Like he just came out with that Muslim I can't remember what nations are on his list there, but yeah, he's he banned travel to and from certain Islamic nations, right? So, and people that
That, but
criticize like,
but he
like
did that before. But he did that before as well, the travel bans, because he doesn't want that for America. But what he did, this is the ridiculous thing, right? You try you're hard against the little individuals from the universities. Good. It's not that I'm saying it's not good. So who are anti-Semitic, you send them back. But then you go to their sponsor and then have a deal with their sponsor who is sponsoring this whole ideology. If you look
yeah.
at Qatar is the number one yani sponsor of the universities in the West, especially in America. Qatar and the UAE, also China, by the way, and Saudi. Why would these terrorist states, these Islamic terrorist states, have so much invested in the universities? Why? Because they
Well,
want,
it makes sense to me. It's
yeah,
like you conquer the mind. That's where the battle's firstly fought. If you win the
exactly,
mind, you've won. Like you've won over the
exactly.
next generation. If you can win,
And
if you can turn the entire world against Israel in universities with the younger generation, it's only a matter of time before the armies gather against them, right? This is simple stuff to me.
very
I
simple
can't
stuff.
believe
You
it.
just follow the money, and also the
That's right.
UN. Who is
That's right.
sponsoring the UN? Qatar.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Qatar being called on, to be responsible for what Qatar does in the UN? They never, Never. Qatar is untouchable, literally, because Qatar is, that's where all this, oil comes from. They don't do anything, by the way. They haven't built anything. All those buildings that you see in Qatar is built by French engineers, by Canadian engineers, by American engineers. Like, they just
Yeah,
outsource everything, and then they brag about the shiny stuff, and then they pay these engineers 10 times what the engineers would make in their own country. So yeah, they have the budget to build these fantastic buildings, but the brains and the minds is all in the West. So
sure.
we are the ones who are because of creative thinking, because of individuality, because of all these stuff that we have built
Yeah,
throughout our nations with hard work, is then literally, if you then go to Qatar for one visit, which Trump did, and then he starts praising them for all that, and I'm like, that's not fair, because they didn't build it. The
yeah, but don't.
universities is built by
Okay,
the Christians. The
now.
first university, the first university in the UAE, for instance, is built by Christian missionaries. Like, no one talks about that, but then all the glory goes to Qatar. And what does Qatar do? Qatar violates human rights. Qatar sponsors the state terrorism. Qatar is the one who sponsored Hamas. We talk about the Ayatollahs. They are the brains behind the military brains, right? They're not the sponsors. The sponsors are is Qatar. And who did Trump have this new relationship with? Qatar. So it's crazy, absurd, and very discouraging.
Well, okay, absolutely. And like now, because Trump points out things like that, I mean, he makes statements, oh, look what they've done. But see, doesn't that tell you, even though you just said that, like he's in the know, but like, why would he make statements like that? Like if it's, I don't think he knows. I think he knows certain things, but on a level, like I just think he's being played too. So that's my perspective. It's not to downplay, obviously he has all the intelligence available, like, but does he
Yes.
use it? Does he know it? I don't know.
Then
I I
if we thought he was such a naive little puppy guy, then why did not why then
yeah, no,
like
I like your
it's
view, and you know what? You're probably right. It's just that some of the things that he does say, I don't know. I mean, yeah, there could be strategy behind that, but I mean, and the theories are endless. But okay, well,
look
okay, let's.
look when they came and they when Trump said, I don't know if you followed that, but when Trump said the Arabs have asked me to change the name of the Persian Gulf to the Arab Gulf, and I'm
Yeah,
thinking about it.
that shouldn't
No,
have
but
happened.
that doesn't. No, but I mean, like, it's about why. Because if you control the waters in the Hormuz Strait, because what is the biggest enemy, or the biggest problem that America right now has, is China, right? China getting ahead, China this, China that.
Well,
Well,
they don't
who
go
is?
to war like over all these. If you think about it, China's rising up in the shadows. I mean, well, not really, but like, yeah, they're not
Yes, they
fighting all
are.
these.
They're
Yeah,
not exactly, but because they are technologically advancing, right?
yeah.
So that is the biggest war that America has. Now, that plays into this whole Persian Gulf thing, because the Ayatollahs through the Persian Gulf and down to the Hormuz Strait are exporting oil to all this time to China. So that's what they don't want. They want to control the oil. So if you control it, everything is about oil, and everything is about money and
Money.
oil.
Yeah,
Right, and what is money? Oil. So
sure.
that's the whole thing. The whole thing is very simple. It's about the war that America right now has with China, and China is connected to the Ayatollahs occupying Iran, and that's what Trump wants to stop. And so that's why he is right now being sort of like, because if you butter up to the Arabs and make sure that the Arabs don't sell their oil, because if you want to also tell Qatar or Bahrain or whatnot, these countries who are sponsoring terror and who are the cause of all this terrorism against the Jews, if you go too harsh against them, they might also start selling their oil to China and or into Russia. So it's about controlling the world and losing
Hmm.
that battle if you don't butter up to the Arabs, to yani to the Gulf, the Persian Gulf states who are annexed by the Arabs right now. So it's all about that. We think a lot of things, but I know if you look at Trump, his heart is with the Christians and with the Jews, but his mind is with the money.
Yeah, that's a good
So
way. I like how you, that's a very good summary. I like summary moments like that. That's good because if you can simplify what's going on with few words in the way that you did there, I think that I agree with that. Yeah, his heart is with Christians and Jews, but yeah, his mind's set
it's
on
his family, it's his
yeah,
background, his
yeah.
ideas are
That's well, yeah,
all
that's right
yours.
because that's yeah, that's right. Why wouldn't it be, right? Why wouldn't it be?
And also,
But
like Trump himself, like he doesn't come from a very, like he's not a historian or something.
no,
Trump is
no.
his
He's
father built casinos, right? So he
yeah,
grew
yeah.
up in an environment. Everything was about beautiful women and about mafia leaders. That's why he's so good with these people because he knows how to. If you look at how Trump deals with stuff, it's every time when he goes to a bunch of terrorists, he starts buttering him up. Oh, you're such a good king. Oh, you're so masculine. Oh, you're so handsome. Very very basic stuff, but that is how he does it. It's like that's why also with the Ukraine and Russia conflict, people were like, "You're not too hard, Yani, you're not harsh enough against Putin." And he's like, "If I'm harsh, then can I do business with him?" So his whole business model is buttering them up. It's very, very simple stuff, actually, if you look at his behavior, how he does that. And then here we are, the people looking at this and just like eating ourselves up, like, what the hell is going on? No, but yeah, that we can't do anything. These are our leaders, and it's all
But I
about
mean, yeah,
money.
and I don't know. That's why you have to have very good counsel, right? You got to have like I definitely make you like yeah, my special envoy or counselor, right? When it comes to everything Iranian, of course, and the Middle East too, because you need voices like yourself countering like I would invite people that disagree with like that just will challenge my thinking. Like that's how you grow. Like that is how you're going to grow. That's what I
But
would my advice.
Trump doesn't invite people who
No,
counter him. He
no. I
invites
mean,
people who
you
are
need the
loyal
counter.
to him and who
Yeah,
who he trusts. But then I mean, like, well, who is Steve Witkoff? Like he
I don't.
uh,
Yeah, it's well, he's
he's not
the
he's not an intellectual, he's not a politician, he's just like a very simple guy. So last time when Trump this time before when he was in office, he actually had better yani not better, but I mean like more educated people somehow in some ways, not all of them. I mean like the closest people to him. For instance, JD
right.
Vance is very educated, right? He's a lawyer, he's a good thinker. He's also individual. Like you could see that he has his individuality. It's not like it's
Yeah,
not
that's
a
good.
pack.
Yeah, yeah,
But Steve Witkoff is just like I don't know. Like you have to search him up, and then you have to
yeah. I'd have to spend the
see him
time. I
talk
haven't,
the way.
right? So yeah. Well, okay. I'm gonna jump in. We're gonna go back to question four here, okay? Because yeah, we want to keep it moving along, but that's great, great information. Like it's been excellent. Actually, I really like getting those thoughts out of you. It's really good, right? Because people appreciate that. People really appreciate what you have to say. So it helps grow the mind and the thinking, right? That's what we're trying to do, is
What
like
what
expand the
what
mind.
is your own what is your own thought about what you have seen? And what I want to ask you is how have
Right,
you seen the people around you react to what Trump has been doing lately and the decision that he has been making? For instance, like do you remember he was like very harsh on the Ayatollahs, right? He was like, oh, they should not
right.
go nuclear, this and that. And right now, I don't know if you heard what he said lastly. He's going to withdraw his troops from the Middle East because it's dangerous for them, he said. Like this is
Mm.
literally what you're
You know,
withdrawing the attack. They're I don't understand.
I yeah, and honestly, when it comes to things like that, I don't know enough to really have an intelligent comment. I mean, yeah, I don't. I'd have to study it a little bit more, right? Like before. I mean, I do. I don't think. we're being wise, if I can put it that way, when it comes to Iran and yes, like Qatar, like the things that you just spoke about. Um, I think we're avoiding the inevitable. I hate to put it that way, but it's kind of like how our economy, like in even the US dollar, when you really look at it, it's actually worthless. But it's like the whole system is built on lies, basically. And
The
it's
whole
like,
system is built on control. It's control
sure,
instead of like
yeah, sure.
community and
But
yeah.
it's yeah, because we when you don't do what's right and you keep like compounding the lies and the deception, you create a monster. And like to me,
Yes,
that's where we're at.
that's so correct. And it has a
Yeah.
ripple effect. And these
Yeah.
leaders only think about their own term. So he promised the people prosperity. He promised no war. At what expense? You promised no war, but now you're giving them more time, and their egos is of course extremely hurt. Yeah, I'm talking about the Ayatollahs. And when you're gone, they have way more than they had before. So what you're doing is absolutely crazy. Because before Trump came in, he had these very harsh words against Hamas. They better give all the hostages back before I'm in office. He was very, we were like, wow, thank you. And then he
Yeah.
came, and now it's like, there's still like so
Well,
many hostages
we
there.
don't know what was said behind the scenes or what information was like you just don't see that, right? So yeah, like
With the
yeah, we
information, I mean, like, look, and Israel is very strong, okay, when it comes to
well they have to
battling the
be.
Hamas.
They have to be. Yeah,
But no,
otherwise
I'm
they
just saying they're no match for Israel. Yani Hamas is no match for Israel, right?
yeah, that's
So
right.
it's not like it's hard for them to take out a bunch of. It's again the same story with the Persians and the Arabs.
It,
This is the same. Yeah, it's not even the same because it's not even that the Israelis are not that big. They're not an empire, but still, they're compared to these Hamasis, they're extremely strong. No one, they don't even need help to defeat the Hamas. But what is happening is every administration from Biden to, yani from Obama to Biden to Trump right now is stopping them from winning. And it's stopping them from doing what they need to do. The neighboring countries are not opening their doors to the civilians so they can actually fight the non-civilians, right? So it's like a war that
Mhm.
everyone is waging with Israel right now. It's not just
Oh, I know.
uh,
Of course. Yeah.
not
Because
just Egypt who's not opening their borders, which is a criminal. Yeah, it's literally criminal what they're doing. No one is at the, calling them in the UN and saying like, why aren't you opening your door for these poor women and children?
because
Because yeah, they have to die.
it's that's right. The Palestine, like if I the way I understand it, if it whatever you want to call the Gaza Strip, um, it's a sacrificial like I like to me the Muslim Brotherhood leaders, I've heard them speak about it. They look at it like it's accomplishing what it's designed to do. It's doing exactly, it's a strategic plan, right? To trigger, like I've heard this, I really actually believe this. It is in a way triggering like kind of like a World War III, if you will, right? I mean, it is turning the nations against Israel. It's been very effective at turning the world against Israel, and they look at that as a win, even if they sacrifice 50,000 people. I've listened to some of the comments, right? It's a strategy. It is a sacrificial, and it's accomplishing what I'm going to talk about the jihadists' perspective, what it's intended to do, 100%. And that's how I see it. And the world will buy it. The West will just they're falling right into like exactly what
The
I would
West is
say.
not the West is
No, go ahead.
there's
Yeah.
a yani the best the deep state, yani the people who are behind this, they know exactly what they're doing. Like
Yeah.
when you're talking about the West, when we talk about the
Well,
civilians, then okay, that's something else. But we are talking about the leaders. They know exactly what. For instance, the Anglos, the British, created this whole dichotomy to begin with. Yani
that
okay, so
sure. Yeah.
how is it a good plan to take a mandate, to take the borders of that the British mandate of Palestine for the first time? That place was called the British Mandate of Palestine, and they actually gave passports. That the 20 years that they were in that region, we have Palestinian passports for the first time, and it was an administrative name. It wasn't a state, right? But how is it a good idea to take that, and which was from Gaza to Iraq, the borders? Yani, if you look at the original mandate, yani the borders from the Mediterranean Sea to Iraq, the borders of Iraq. So that whole region was actually planned for the Jews. But the because that's where they come from. The indigenous people of those lands were the Jews, and they were consistently living there already. And most of them were shattered, where a group of them were consistently living there from throughout the last millennia. So it's not just like that other people were living there now, and so it's not good for yani it's not fair for Jews who were in the diaspora to come back because they were also living there along all these other people. And how is it a good
Yeah.
idea to then import a bunch of Arabs from the desert? Because the Hashemites, they're literally they were imported from the region that we now call the Saudi Arabia. They were imported from that region to modern day Jordan. Jordan is the biggest portion of the Palestinian mandate. So when we are talking about the two-state
Yeah.
solution, that only happened in 1940, before 1948 already, because they first gave the biggest portion to the Arabs who never lived there. So there were Arabs who were living there, some nomads, some Bedouins who were living
Yeah,
there, I
that's
mean,
right. Yeah,
but
that's right.
mostly they are exported from Saudi. And who were the Hashemites? The Hashemites were another tribe, because you had the South. Right now it's called Saudi because of the family, the tribe South, right? You had the South, and then you had the Hashemites. They were living there in that region under the Ottoman Empire. They didn't have a land or anything. Any in Saudi, I mean, modern day Saudi. But when the Ottomans fell, before that even, the Anglos went to the Arabs and said, if you help us defeat the Ottomans, and mind you, the Ottomans and the Arabs were not enemies, they were Islamic fucking brothers. I mean, like, it's so, they say kufar kufar to the ones who are not Muslim, but look at it, each time who is the one who is betraying their own Muslim brother? The Muslims. So it's like, so the Anglos went to the Arabs and said, okay, you help us defeat the your brothers, basically, and then we'll give you land. And so exactly that happened. They helped the Anglos defeat the Ottomans in some regions, and so they were promised land. They're the imperial project of the Anglo. So they were literally imported just because of that promise from Saudi to Jordan, and then they were crowned with, you are a king now. The same goes with Saudi. When was Saudi created? In 1921, I think, or 23, something like that. When was Jordan created? Not even 70 years ago, 70 something years ago. So it's like, then you know that they are arch enemies of each other. So the Muslim, you know that the Muslims hate the Jews. The Jews didn't hate the Muslim. The Muslims hate the Jews. Then you put them in under one like on mandate, and then you just give them the land of someone else, and then of course the Muslims went rogue and started occupying Jerusalem. Yani, the Hashemites started attacking in a war Jerusalem and annexed Jerusalem and called it the fucking West Bank of Jordan. And what is Jordan is now the new country. They should have called it the I don't know, the land of the Palestinians,
Well,
or
they could have called
the
it Palestine,
Palestine,
right? They could have called
whatever.
it
If they're so
Palestine.
Palestine, and when they attacked, we have newspapers literally. And when they attacked, what was the newspaper saying? The Arabs attacked Palestinians, yeah, the Jews. Because in those times, only the Jews were called the Palestinians. No Arab called themselves Palestinian, and rightfully so, because Palestinian was a Roman slur. It has literally
Exactly.
nothing to do with them.
It
So
it
this whole
just
thing is
it's
orchestrated by the West.
yeah, that well it's chaos, right? It is
It's
chaos. It's
chaos
complete.
that the Anglos created, as always. I mean, like the Anglos, they give land from other people, and then they give it to the Arabs. Why? Not because they're such good people, because they can control the Arabs. Because who were the
Well,
Arabs? They were illiterate. They didn't have a culture to say us. We have such a like the Iranians. You could control them. And if you right now see King Abdullah right now, the one who is in Jordan, who is the king, his mom is literally an Anglo. Yani he has blue eyes, right? His
yeah,
dad had a bunch of wives, all of them like beautiful white people, so they have better, because it's very important in the Arab culture, in the Islamic culture. Your skin color is extremely important because you have colorism in Islam, in the theology and in the doctrine of Islam. So it's all a bunch of imperial people, mostly the Anglos, but also the Franks, because the same
it's
thing happened in
yeah,
Syria.
it at the end of the day, whoever has the power, basically controls the roost, right? Like that's why like it's a big arms race, right? So that ultimately, yeah, who can basically
No, but I
control
mean,
and
like
dominate.
this is orchestrated by, because the it is also called the British um the British
Mandate.
Mandate of Palestine. It's
Mhm.
it's like it's literally on the name, the British Mandate of Palestine. It's not something that we have to guess or something. These were the Brits. They have recorded how these Arabs lived, how these Jews were evolving, and they called these Arabs all sorts of names because they were lazy, they didn't want to work. So they knew exactly who they gave it to. So this whole narrative is a gaslight. The Jews never took land from the freaking Arabs. Never. It was the
Yeah,
Arabs who took the lands of the Jews. It was the Arabs who attacked and annexed Judeo-Samaria. And now the international body that is super corrupted, which is the UN, calls it the annexed, the occupied West Bank. But the West Bank, it's like calling the sky the West Bank. It's a name that
mhm,
is very new. It's from the 1940, after
yeah.
1946. So it's just ridiculous. All this whole thing is
But it's
created
not
by the
about
white.
truth, right? To these people,
No,
it's that's right.
no,
That's
these
right.
people are in, yani, okay, but look, if you're a child, you're born into a family, and your dad and your mom tells you that this was stolen land, they stole it from us, you believe it. These poor people don't know either. Like, if you look, I am in contact with the Palestinians, I talk with them. These poor souls, they don't know better. They are indoctrinated, and they really believe this. And when you come with actual history and you say, hey, this and this happened, this is propaganda, because
Of
to
course
their
they'll say
mind
that. Yeah,
it's.
yeah, yeah. That's a given
But
because you're
we know it's not just the Arabs, it's a deep dark state behind the Arabs who's sponsoring all of this hatred, and
yeah. Because
they wanted you
the thing
to stop.
is, if you can convince them that they're in error, it defeats the purpose of why they're there and how they're being played. Do you understand? People have to believe in their cause. That's key. It's key to like the role that they'll play. And if you can undermine that with truth and intelligence, then actually I would say that you're winning the fight because the
Yeah.
physical fight will accomplish like nothing. Like, okay, yeah, you'll have a whole bunch of dead bodies, but the ideology is the problem. It's always the education, the ideology,
Yes.
how you're raised.
Yes.
It's like this is 1 + 1 = 2. The physical fight is nothing. It's the end result of all the hatred or whatever, vice versa.
Yes. All the
But I mean,
indoctrination. Yeah.
right. It's the education is where it begins. That is where everything begins. Like I could tell a kid, I call it this like the Santa Claus complex, right? Like I tell a 5-year-old kid anything and they believe me. Why? Because they trust me. That's why. And like
Yes.
it's yeah. I mean this is simple concepts, right? But it's like I don't know. Yeah, and then you wonder.
But
Yeah,
it's
it's like you said.
criminal, though. I mean,
I know,
it's criminal. It's against values to indoctrinate
but they
children
don't
to become
care. Like they don't
warlords.
care. They don't care. It's
No,
war, right?
but also we don't, like, if you look at the Palestinian sort of like this, when I say Palestinian, I mean the modern day bullshit. When you look at how eager they are, how every day they want to do organize something, that's not how we are, because we're just living our lives and we
Yeah,
don't
that's
want
right.
all of that, right? So they become stronger because we're not countering them and we're not
Yeah, that's
organized.
right. Exactly.
Because we're not like we don't have such a goal. Like we're just living our freaking lives. We just want to be happy, healthy. We mind
Yeah.
our food, what we how we treat our partners, because that's what life is about. But these people are obsessed, and they're also sponsored. So each day, and that's why they, they can do so many things, because that's how the world works. If you just fight for something, even if it's a lie, and you do it enough, then you will have a bunch of other morons following you. And
Yeah.
it's
That's right.
crazy that the
Yeah.
people who are right
Because
are
it's not
usually silent.
about truth. It really isn't about truth. It's just about, yeah, like you said, like whatever cause like floats your boat, and I don't know, whatever indoctrinate. Now some people do break out of it, like Mossad Youssef or
Yeah,
whatever,
Mossab is
Mossad Hassan.
it's like, yeah, Mossab is just like a freaking miracle. But it's not just a
Yeah.
miracle, because he was also trained. Yani he was when he came out of it, it was a process. Right? It wasn't that it didn't happen
Oh
just
yeah,
like
he's a
that. But
powerful soul. I mean, he just, yeah.
he was treated with a lot of love and loyalty by the Mossad, and he was shown facts. He was behind the scenes. He could see for the first time, but that the things that he
Yeah.
was taught by his father were a bunch of lies. And so
Yeah.
it's a special case. If you put that much energy in anyone, you could eventually convert them. But that's not, and that is a good thing that you actually said. And that's not what we are doing. Look, if we take the children, these are children in Gaza right now, right? If you take these
Yeah.
they are them, yeah, they have, I don't want to say demonic, but the way they have been trained is very evil. Like they could do very evil stuff. If you listen to the survivors of 7 October, what they did personally to them, even the kids, you just like, is that a kid or is that a monster? So it's crazy. I know that, but I'm just saying eventually these are children. If you take these children, or if you take these people and actually do something with them, like
Hmm.
reprogram their freaking minds, like educate them, like decolonize their minds from Islam, just like what we did
You,
with the
yeah.
Germans, with the
Good
Nazis.
luck. Yeah. I mean,
Well, no one
yeah.
wants to do it because it's controversial. How dare you say that your culture is better than someone else's culture?
Oh, I
How
would
dare
say
you
my
say that
culture is better. Yeah.
of course,
I
but
have no
that's what
problem
they
with
say.
that.
How dare
Yeah.
you
I have no
say
problem saying that. Yeah.
objective morality exists?
Yeah.
How dare you say Islam is not true? How dare you say Islam is bad? How do you know? Well, these are the answers that you get if you say such a thing. Meanwhile, in China, they call it mental disease. They call Islam a mental disease. They turn mosque into toilets, literally public
Yeah. They're
toilets.
tearing them down. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Well, they
and
see
that's
what's
why
going
they're
on.
winning. That's
Yeah.
why they're winning, because no one is on the neck of China saying, "Oh, that's discrimination. How dare you?" No
You
one
know
cares.
what? These leftists type people are essentially responsible for like it's ironic actually. And like this unholy alliance like the leftists and like yeah, the jihadists, it's like it's hilarious. It's like it's like the epitome of stupidity, and the irony is just unreal. And like yeah, but they'll use it. They'll use it against it. I mean, basically, to me, the West, in the way I understand it, is kind of falling as a result of these liberal morons that are facilitating them under the guise of this diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's like I feel like I'm witnessing the start of the destruction, right? Like of what's coming,
Yes.
because of our own stupidity, and it's like it's unreal. But you know what? Like we are doing it to ourselves, and it's like it's unreal how they can't see it. And like I think some people do see it,
Yeah.
but I think the majority of people have
But
no
the
clue.
silent majority also is quiet because they are productive, right?
Yeah, that's
People
right. Yeah, yeah, because
who were the
yeah, we
loudest
actually have to work.
online are
Yeah.
usually people who were pretty destructive. So it's also, we don't know.
I know.
I think
Okay.
there are a lot of people who are actually seeing stuff, but they're just silent about it because
Yeah,
they have better things to
but
do. They think
that's fine, but like at the end of the day, we all are responsible.
underestimating what's happening, I think.
We have to do something, right? Everyone has to do their
Yes.
part. It doesn't mean that you have to do what we're
Yes.
doing. You, you, we all have a responsibility. We all have a part to play. So do something. act in wisdom, but measure it out. Like look in yourself and ask yourself, am I not doing anything because A, okay, I'm too busy. Okay, that's one thing. Or is it because I'm too afraid? That's another. Just be genuine, be honest with yourself and know the
Or too
reasons.
selfish and too shallow. Because
Yeah.
if you
Well, there's that
also,
too. Yeah.
it's like, look, religion and all these tribal ideas does unite because you feel like we are one in something, and we don't have that anymore. We know better. We have evolved in so many ideas and so in science. So we
Ugh,
know a lot of these ideas were just a
yeah.
bunch of nonsense. But the ones who are stronger are still the ones who are united under one flag or under one ideology or under one tribe. That's why they're stronger than the. Yani, if you look at the people that, for instance, in my personal life, my friends, they're hyper intelligent people who are busy building their dreams because they're not busy being a tribe, right? And they
Yeah.
are the
No,
ones
that's
who come up
good.
with
That's smart.
they
Yeah.
are the ones who come up with the science. They are the ones who come up with something for sustainability, or they are doing something. But the ones who are strong when it comes to culture is the ones who are like, for instance, now the flag of Palestine. Under one flag, if you have a majority of people who are jobless or whatnot, or they don't feel good about themselves or life, and they just feel now righteous to scream, then a bunch of people who haven't worked on themselves, still
Yeah.
the irony is that they're strong and we are not, because it's very crazy. The world is so crazy because you can say about those people who are intelligent, who are busy having happy lives and actually spending time on each other, on themselves, on their careers, on their children. These people are the ones who are losing against the morons. It's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're 100% right. And yeah, that's why yeah, you got to consider these things. But okay.
It's very paradoxical if you think about these things.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, but we're responsible as we get older. I mean, it's our world. Like every generation, it gets handed off to you. It's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to be a coward? Are you going to start addressing things for what they are? I mean, what do we
You
want?
know what is,
But
but you know what is interesting? The Jews, even though a lot of Jews are atheists or they
yeah,
have different
yeah, well,
ideas,
yeah.
they still are united because they're Jews, and that's why the Jews
Well, because
are.
they know, yeah, it's a unique thing, actually.
Yeah, it's very unique. Yeah.
It is because they know that they're going to be, there's a force of annihilation that comes against them, whether you believe or not. I think everyone can admit that. But it's really quite disturbing to me. I never really quite understood that. But because to
No, I
me,
mean,
like,
like, it's a strength. It's a strength that maybe we all want, because if you have a cause together that
yeah,
unites, you have the same
for
enemy
sure.
that unites. Even
Well,
if
they
you
want to
have,
survive. They want to have their own,
even
and they will.
yes, even if
Yeah, they
you
will. They will. They're, yeah.
from different classes, if you have like even a working class to like the academic now in Israel are under one flag, still have the same fight. So that makes them so unique versus us here in the West, where we are shattered because we all are individuals who are not under one flag. And like, for instance,
Well,
before we had
yeah. I mean, Canada doesn't stand for
Christianity,
anything anymore.
we had, well, one flag, right? But that doesn't go anymore because we don't have such a Christianity anymore.
No, Christianity is extremely divided. I mean, there's so many different denominations. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. But I mean, okay, let's go. I want to read question 4, right? Because I think we need to get through this. I do want to get through all the material, but let's
Do you
just
think we can still go through all of it?
well, we've done 1, 2, and 3. I'm pretty that's we're not going back there. But 4 is what role did the decline of women's status play in the decay of ancient civilizations and the eventual rise of Islamic ideas. Now, the reason that's a really good one because I had no idea that Iranian women, like 1400 years ago, like were, you know, like essentially treated as equals, right? Like they were military, they were in the military, they had high offices. I mean, they were very involved in the civilization, which I had no idea about that till I met you, which like I thought that's good. That's right. That's how it should be. I can't understand, like why you want to subjugate your counterpart in that manner. Okay, maybe you're physically stronger, but that does not mean that you should subjugate, your woman or women under you because of those reasons. I mean, that's very shallow, very base level. Why not work together, right? And obviously in Iran, it seems that there's a large history of that, right? So, okay, so what do you have to say about that?
Uh, yeah, that's
I
actually
mean,
the core issue here. What happened,
well, okay,
because
yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
you want to say something?
No, no, I don't. Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah,
go ahead.
so basically, exactly as you said, um, it's about the philosophy. So first, the Iranians had female deities in their belief system, and eventually, in Mitra, because the Iranians used to be Mitraist, and after that they became Zoroastrians. Mitraism is henotheistic, and Zoroastrianism um, became the first monotheistic. Mono means one God. Only any mono
Hmm.
means one, and theism means God, but only one God. So that was the shift that happened from henotheism, which you have a central figure, but you also have deities. We have important deities, but you have one God. That is
Hmm.
henotheism. Polytheism, for instance, is where you have
Yeah,
Zeus and all sorts
multiple.
of gods who are all powerful. All of them are all powerful, and they're fighting each other. And the people are, literally nobodies. Like if the gods want to favor them, they favor them. If they want to kill them, they kill them. There is no morality there. It's just power. In the henotheism that the Iranians had, they had their system of morality, which was like all about truth speaking and oaths and keeping oaths and all these stuff and treating others good.
Hmm.
So when this collapsed, yani, when the basically when the Zoroastrians eventually advanced, yani, because Zoroastrianism is a religion that started somewhere with Zarathustra himself, but it got so, yani, it advanced, or it evolved, or it had all these heresies on top of it, and it kept changing. Eventually, it became pretty misogynistic and anti-women. And some of these ideas of how to treat women, their menstruation, all these stuff comes actually from them. Yani, I didn't know this, but actually it comes from the uh not the historical, like the first Zoroastrians, or the ones who come from the Gathas. It's not from the Gathas, but it's later. It's a later evolvement of the religion. So if you look at how eventually in the time of the Sasanians, it became extremely misogynistic, whereas if you look at millennia before that, Iranian women were uh, judges, they were queen consorts, they chief of military. They owned land, they sold land, and this was unknown in the ancient world. No one was living like this. Yani it was, if you look at the historians, how they.
Ariana, I lost your voice. I lost your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back.
You hear? Okay, that was weird. So
Yeah, it just went. I have
what
no
was the
idea.
last
What was the last thing? Oh, wow, there's a lot.
the last thing?
I have to get back on my train of thought. Yeah, you know what? It slipped my mind too.
Okay, so I was just explaining how
Like,
uh yani before this misogyny entered, for millennia, these Iranian women were just living as equals with men. And in that time, the Romans did not have such a thing. They were extremely misogynistic against women. Women did have no rights, literally. It's just like another Islam. And the same goes with the Babylonians. The same goes with the Assyrians. So it was revolutionary in those times. But then eventually it got, yani, the further they went along, yani, in the time of the Sasanians, it was already a huge decline. of women's rights via these ideologies, so via these philosophies. And then they started to have these inner battles again, against each other's philosophy. So it wasn't just about it's always eventually for power, but I mean, like, there were people who still wanted to revive what was, and then they started fighting each other. And that's when eventually Islam started with this whole misogynistic ideas that the Iranian men had against women eventually in the late 6th century, and in the early 6th century actually. And that's how this all played into the fall of the empire, basically the violation of human rights. And it's not crazy if you are being if you violate female human rights in your country. Look at Islam right now; it's always falling because of cruelty. It never stops with women. It always expands to others. It starts with women, and the otherism expands to your color is wrong, your tribe is wrong. My God said so, and your God said so. But when you have this, if you look at the society who actually gives women the same rights as men and they have the same honor, then they treat others also with honor. So that's very interesting for me to see how that always aligns with each other. If you look at Islam, it's not just the hatred towards women or the apartheid and segregation against women. It's the segregation against Jews, against the Christians, against the Hindus, against the atheists, against everyone who are not male. They're not Muslim male. So that has been
Yeah,
a
well,
little.
it's yeah. It definitely, from what I've seen with Islam, it appeals to, I would say, more of like a conquest type male ego, is just not obviously not all guys are gonna think that way, but definitely it's set up for the male ego, that's for sure. 100%. It's yeah. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it really doesn't. I've it just doesn't. Like it falls apart for me. It's not a higher form of living to me, what's taught and how they spread, it's all like through intimidation, fear tactics, deception, subjugation, and I don't respect that. Absolutely not. You do not win over the soul of an individual or the mind, by the sword. And they might think that they do, but you've accomplished nothing. I mean, to me, it's an illusion. Like it's not genuine as far as I'm concerned. And it's just yeah, like I mean, just learning from you and others, it's interesting that are yeah, like in Iranian history, they actually had some equality at work there. I find that pretty fascinating, actually. You know, it's
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's eventually all about their philosophies and all about their ideologies that the priesthood, which were men, and how they eventually then also ruled over people. So the religions and the philosophies and the ideologies are extremely important because that's how uh, you create these communities, and then people
yeah.
follow you. They start believing it. So all these wars and all these violations started with people who were, you know, thinking about life, but then went rogue with it. Yani, when I say people, men who tossed out women out of the whole thinking arena, and women were not able to think with them or be with them or be a deity or whatnot, and they were tossed out, and it became misogynistic, and then it became all about controlling and competing with each other. It's not only with women but also with other men, other tribes, their neighbors. Versus where you have women are geared differently. Women, by nature, are not competitors and conquerors. They're protectors and providers. Look at how a woman is with their children. They always say
Mhm.
men are protectors and providers, but that's just not their nature. We don't see that. But the nature of men is competing with each other and conquering. That's their nature. They have to learn to provide and protect by controlling their ego. So it's something interesting. If you take the wisdom and the love away that women have, and you become totally man centric, then you have issues with with your philosophy, and that will result in cruelty against each other.
Absolutely. That's well said. Yeah. No, well said. I agree with that 100%. We need to have balance and our civilization needs to maintain that balance, and yeah, Islam does not have a right when it comes to how they treat their women. Absolutely not. I will say that. Like let's go into number five though here too. Like where can you explain like how Islam, okay, this super tribal identity. I mean, you see that now even in the West, right? Um, because you reference these scattered, desert clans, and now it's at the point where there's a whole Islamic Ummah. I know they're all at war against each other too, but ultimately there's a unity against, yeah, like the polytheists, like because we're against them, we're against the Jews, we're against the Christians, and I mean I think that's their only points of unity is just to establish dominance and world conquest, right? But I mean, yeah, like how do you, I mean, it's amazing to me that like Islam has spread the way that it has. I'm quite surprised, to be honest. But so,
Um,
yeah, what's
in
your answer to that?
You mean like you're surprised how because they
Well,
were
I'm just surprised that Islam grew to the point of what it is. I actually am. I'm not. I just am because it doesn't check out in a lot of ways to me when you look at the Quran it just doesn't it really falls apart to me on multiple fronts just the level too of I'm gonna say I don't know just everything about it to me doesn't check out it just does not seem it's mixed it's a deception to me is how I see it
yeah,
it's
it's like
it's
a
got
mirage.
yeah, it's got elements of certain things that are good, like you could say quote unquote good, but then it's perverse too at the same time. Like it's a mixed, it's not right. And like even I understand that Muhammad himself questioned his quote unquote revelations from Gabriel, right? Like a, quote unquote, like the guy himself questioned it. What does that tell you? Like I mean, it doesn't check out to me. This whole thing with the Kaaba and it just it none of it does to me. It's I have my theories and ideas behind what's behind all this, but it doesn't to me it's not right. It's not pure and it's not a religion that I would ever endorse. Absolutely not. And it's a threat to the West. And, people say, oh, that's being Islamophobic. Well, you're damn right it's being Islamophobic. I would not allow, it to take root. And if I had a nation, it would not be allowed to take root. And also you look at the way they treat, like Christians and minority groups in a full-on Islamic country. Take a look, right? Think about what they would do here, if they gain full control. I mean, that's what I can't stand about people. Of course, they play the victim, yeah, when they don't have power. That's exactly what they're going to do. And then when they get power, they're going to slaughter you. It's exactly what
Exactly.
the yeah. It's obvious to me. But it's like, yeah, you deal with like our leaders, like of course in their stupidity, and it's like you're just going to embolden them, and they're going to get a stronger foothold, and they know it, and they say it, and then you deny it. You guys are like the biggest fools. I swear to God, this generation. I would say in my age category, I've got to be some of the most like I'm going to call them moronic, stupid of all the generations to me. Like in terms of leadership, it's just it's the tipping point to me of like I feel like the undermining and the fall of the mindset of the West is falling apart to me. Like it's I can't see it recovering to be honest. Like financially, we've fallen apart too, and it's all lies to me. And it's yeah, the destruction of morality too is a big part of this because now we don't stand for anything, right? That's why all these other our enemies can come in very easily because they use the system against us. That's how I see it for that question. But
Right.
I mean, and that kind of goes into, I'm kind of accelerating a little bit. That kind of goes into number six because you talk about how the Islamic ideas were borrowed or distorted,
Yeah, all of them. Like, okay, so How did Islam observe ideas from earlier empires and turn them into pan-imperial identity? It's like it's not really hard if you because let's get something straight. Islam was not born in a vacuum. It was um not some divine light bolt over the empty desert. It
Hmm.
was a sponge ideology, observing and remixing and then
Yeah.
weaponizing ideas from the Jewish uh, prophecy or the Zoroastrian dualism or the Greco-Roman imperialism or the Byzantine administration. So it's like Muhammad himself was literally a Frankenstein who was, uh, thought these ideas by himself. Like for instance, personally, I mean, if we before he got to the Sahaba, because that's further on the history himself. If we just look at individually, first of all, most of the things that came to him was literally by a man, an Iranian man, like a Parthian theologian, basically. So the magician, they call him. He has all sorts of names, but he was basically the man who yeah, like the man who whispered all these ideas into him because Muhammad was not a strategist, he was not a theologian, he couldn't even read or write. So what he built came from like all these other people, and especially these Zoroastrians and or Mitrists who wanted to use him for their own disputes in their own country. But then it went rogue, and then when it went rogue, yani they got the power. What they did after yani they had an army and they could actually yani the way they attacked was also very mysterious because the Iranians had double the number of men. It was impossible to defeat them, but and it's also if you look at the territory of Iran, it's you have the Zagros Mountains. It's so impossible to know where they are or where they're hiding or how they move if you don't know the land. So a bunch of desert people could go to the desert to the ancient Iran and then know exactly where these people were and then ambush them by sleeping in that same sort of area, because that's a story that they tell, is that the army of the Sahaba, they literally hid behind the Iranian army, and then they divided in two. And then in the morning, when the Iranians wanted to go to the place where they knew that these Arabs were, they were, attacked from somewhere, a place that they weren't expected. So it's obvious that this was an intel job, that like it was something from the
Yeah,
Iranians
sure.
themselves who did that. So that is already how it starts. But eventually later, you then have a bunch, and then it went rogue. It was a weapon who did, literally designed by the Iranians, but they couldn't control it anymore. It was a weapon against another Iranian power, but they're supposed to not go and take over the empire. That was not the plan. It was an oopsie,
Hmm.
Annie. But um, if you look at how then it evolved, not only in Iran but also in Rome, is they burned libraries, they took over scientists, they took over the Christian scientists, the Jewish scientists, and they called them Muslim, and they called them part of their own empire. And if you look at any of their scientists, if you look at any of their scholars, all of them are either Iranian or they're Jews or they're Christians. So that's how
Yeah.
they expanded. So they took over the best people, and then also forced them, of course, because they were very, very cruel. Because that's the only thing they had. If you look at the
Well,
criminals,
that's
why?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's conquest by the sword, right? I mean, by all means necessary. Yeah.
Yes, and if you have lost your military, because most of the military that they had eventually also in the beginning was all sort of trained Iranian, men or trained later Roman, uh, Romans who they took in their military. So it wasn't that they were the strategists or they were uh the thinkers or whatnot, but it also fell. I mean, like it's not something that they could. But what the Muslims don't tell the people is that eventually they lost most of these territories, and it was because of the Mongols, because the Mongols, uh, basically Chinese, who attacked. and took over. They became the biggest colonizers, and they unfortunately converted to Islam. So then you have a mingled of Chinese people who don't come who conquered all these areas and then turned into Islam and converted into Islam, and that's how the Ottoman Reich was born. Because the Turks, there was no thing as a Turk. We didn't have such a language as the Turkish language. The Turkish language is a mixture of the Chinese language and with the Greek language and the Iranian language. The whole identity is a new identity from the 7th century. Yani, not even, sorry, not from the 7th century. It was centuries after that, even when the Mongols attacked. So these Arabs all basically lost all these territories because they didn't have the brains, they didn't have the strategy, they didn't have the discipline, they didn't have the civilizational mind to keep it. So they only had it for a very short period of time. Even if you look at the countries they have right now, all of them are gifted by the Anglos to them after the Ottoman fall. Even under the Ottomans, the Arabs were basically second-rank citizens because they were stupid. Yeah, they were uneducated, and they were not builders, they were not engineers, they were nobodies. Also, even under the Ottoman Empire, so they were treated like. If you look at the Turk, if even right now, if you ask the Turk, basic people in Turkey, it doesn't matter. If you ask them what they think about the Arabs, they look down upon the Arabs because the Arabs were not builders. The Arabs didn't invent anything, so they only observe. That's how they have what they have. And right now, if you look at Iraq, is created out of a mandate. Syria is created out of the mandate. Lebanon is created out of the mandate. Jordan is created out of the mandate. So all these
Mm.
countries are created by the Anglos. So it's not a conquest that they won. They have been gifted these countries. And the stupidness of the West, the Anglos, is that
Yeah,
instead of giving it to the Christians, because that's where yani, for instance, Syria or Lebanon, we're all Christian. So if you give it at least the leadership to the Christians, then you're safe. But they give it to Arabs, Arab Muslims. So the Arab Muslims, they literally threw out everyone eventually. If you look at Lebanon, such a gorgeous country, such intelligent people, these are all Arabitized people. None of these people are Arabs. These were Phoenicians, Syria, these
yeah.
were Syrians. Yemen, these were Yemenis. Iraq, these were Iranians.
Mm.
And yani what you have right now in Turkey, this was Constantinople. So all of what you see, right, the only place that was so-called Arab is in the Hijaz. So that's in the heart of the desert in Saudi. That's the only place that they had. That's the original people, if you will. The rest of all these people who are now Arabs, and we see such a broad Arab population, is because they have been Arabitized. Literally, how do you know that someone colonizes you? Is that your language is their language now. Yeah, you speak their language by force. Your own language is not spoken anymore. In Lebanon, they
Yeah,
don't
it's a
speak
good point.
Phoenician anymore. In Syria, they don't speak Syrian, any their ancient language anymore. It's all turned into Arabic. So now you have under this broad umbrella of Arab, you have all these nations who have been colonized. When they wake up to this colonization and say, no more, we're going to go back, that's when this dissolves because they don't have actual power. Because where's the power? The power is in technology, the power is in your brain, the power is in your civilizational soul. That's where power comes from. How did, for instance, the Romans or the Iranians build all of this? Because they were thinkers, because they were the first scientists. That's how they built. How are we in the West advancing this much in technology? Because we are thinkers. But Islam, literally, what did they do for their living? It's literally something that their own text says. They stole caravans. They raped women. They took the sex slaves. So yani, they're basically what their livelihood was human trafficking, not only sex slavery, also work slavery. A lot of Christian white people were, even by the Vikings, were sold to these people as, that's how they did business, because they had no craftsmanship, because they weren't engineers, they didn't do anything, they just took over,
Mhm.
and then that's how it went rogue. So if you are ever thinking about it's crazy, it's because it is crazy. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But if you look at it, it does make sense. If I right now come to, like, if I go to, I don't know, let's say Einstein was alive. I go to Einstein's house. I put a gun because he's not, obviously he's not a bodybuilder. I put a I don't know, a sword to his throat or a gun to his head and say, write for me, write a book for me, write an article for me because I can't do it myself. And then call it your article because there's a gun on his head. He will gonna do it. He's gonna think
Yeah,
smart.
that's right.
That's how it went down. That's how they
Yeah.
did it. Exactly like that. They force people. And there are people, for instance, in Iran, there are scientists or there are writers or philosophers who, if you look deeper into their stuff, you see satire, you see sarcasm against the Muslims, even if it's very
Mhm.
small and they can't see it, but they hated them. Even though their names were was changed into Arab names, they hated them because these people were barbarians.
Yeah.
Bas-
And I mean, yeah, it's a good answer. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, just to hear some of the history like that I've never heard of before, right? Yeah, it's not spoken of in the way that you do that. But let's change gears. Like this question 8 and 9 here, a little bit more theological, right? Like based. So let's do 8 and 9, and like talk about like how figures like Marcion and Augustine shape the West's
That's
uh,
a very, very good question.
yeah,
That's how,
theological vulnerability before Islam's rise, and that does tie into a little bit of 9 and why did Christianity, particularly in Rome, lose its ability to theologically or militarily resist rising powers like Islam. It's kind of 2 and 1 there, but yeah.
yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
So that's actually the heart of, look, so there are historians. If you are ask the Christian historians or the secular historians, you will have two answers. The Christian historians will say we were sinners, and that's why God, allowed these people to invade us. The secular historians say, well, um, we were tired because we were tired. We were in constant war with each other. Um, and the Romans and the Persians were fighting each other, and that's why they had a loophole, and that's how they attacked us. And there are people who say, and there are other seculars who say, well, Christianity bastardized the whole Roman might, and they weren't fighters anymore, and that's why we lost. And if you look at that answer, it sounds very crude, but if you look at the last answer, what happened is a theological mistake because if you look at the Bible, if you read the Bible uh, in a way like in a holistic way, and you don't divide it, you just read it as it is, you will never find a dichotomy from the Jews to other Jews because, well, Jesus was a Jew, Moses was also a Jew, Paul was a Jew. Peter was. All of them were Jews. There was no
Oh
such
yeah,
thing as,
yeah,
it's a Jewish
of
thing.
course.
It's a Jewish story. Okay, but what these theologians weren't Jews. These theologians were Greeks and Romans, right? So what this best gentleman did, he created this whole. He literally said, okay, the God of the Torah is a very violent God, and he's not just, he's violent, he's bloodthirsty, and the God of uh, um, Jesus is a very meek God. And so we call that Old Testament, we call this New Testament. Yani we call the Torah Old Testament and we call the Gospel New Testament. That's when the dichotomy started. And this was like 104 AD. And this is not to be found in the Bible. You will not even find the word testament in the Bible in the Greek. You will find
Of course,
covenant,
yeah. Mhm.
covenant, not testament.
Right.
And covenant is something else than testament. And so if you look at the theology of it, you see that in Leviticus 19, for instance, you see that uh, the God of the Bible says to the Hebrews, love your enemy, love your neighbor as yourself, and love your God with all your might, heart, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself, but the Hebrew neighbor, literally, explicitly Hebrew neighbor as yourself. And in the new covenant, you have love your neighbor as yourself. And then when the question is asked, who is my neighbor? Then it's pointed out to the Samaritan, and the
Hmm.
Samaritan were the enemies of the Jews. So
Yeah,
basically, now we have the nations involved, included, and that was the whole promise to begin with. The promise was that it would be a savior, a Messiah who would also come for the nations, and not just for the Jews. So that's the new covenant. And but these Greek philosophers, yeah, philosophers, these Greek theologians, they said no, we are the new Jews, we are the new covenant, and they are the old. So that's where the hatred also started against the Jews. That's where the whole
yeah,
anti-Semitism
I
started
agree
against
with
the
that.
that's
Yeah,
that's basically replacement theology. You replace them with yourself, and you're now saying by semantics, you do it by a bunch of words, you put that together, and then you have this whole new thing that is now living and kicking, and it's just not the truth. But millions of people have been slaughtered because of these ideas till now.
of course.
So
Yeah,
so so that also plays into the whole weakening of the men, let's say, and the armies and everything, because they went with only the gospels and also with what they understood of it. So basically turn the other cheek, not in a um, biblical way, because even if you read it in a Jewish way, what that means, look, if someone comes to you and they beat you with the back of their hand on your face, it's not because they want to kill you, right? They want to insult you. You only slap a person with the back of your hand that you don't respect, you see lower than yourself, bomb in your face, just like shut up, something like that. It's not something you don't want to murder a person who you do that to. So Jesus there literally out of strength, he says, then turn the other cheek. Basically, he's saying like, when, I don't know if you have ever personally experienced something like that, but if someone is so weak that they can't talk to you and they slap you like that in your face, they want to insult you because they're actually uh, intimidated by you, and you turn your other cheek and say, okay, beat me here too if you have nothing to say, because this is not something that is going to kill you, then that person is super humiliated. It was out of strength, but this is how the Jew reads it. But no, the Christian turned this into, no, you have to sacrifice yourself, you have to forgive yourself. It turned into this theology that is not in the Bible. And and then they tie that into the Jesus going on the cross, and then the whole theology became about sacrifice. Okay, if you are like that, you have no way to protect yourself, you have no way to protect your nation, you have no way to say that people cannot be toxic to you, because basically now you have uh, created dichotomy between uh, parts of the Bible and put them up against each other, and created something that is not to be found if you don't read the Bible like that. If you read it as a whole and read it as a Hebrew light would read it. And how do you do that? By allowing the Hebrews on the round table to also think. Well, what the Greeks and the Romans, because they hated the Jews. What they did is they tossed them out of the game, and they basically said, "You are a Jew, and you need to become a Christian. You have to convert into Christianity. That's why you have forced conversions of Jews. They didn't allow the Christians, yeah, sorry, they didn't allow the Jews to have circumcision or keep their law, Shabbat, or all these stuff. But it's a wrong thing, because if you look at Paul, for instance, Romans, if you read Romans, if you look at Paul, when he talks about himself as a Jew, he says, "I'm a Jew from Tarsus. Let me speak to my people." He, like, 5 times in the Bible, Paul says, "I'm a Jew," and each time, one time, for instance, he says, "I keep all the law because I'm a Jew." But when he talks to the nations, or let's say Gentiles, because goim, right, it means nations, right? If he talks
Mhm.
about to the nations, he said, don't put the yoke of the law on them because it's not their freaking culture, right? It's not.
Yeah,
They're
that's right.
if I have to, as so an Iranian right now, if I want to be a Christian and I see 618 laws, I think, bye, goodbye. What the hell? 618 laws? But right now, even the Jews don't have 680 because they don't have their temple anymore. But those were the laws. You had literally has 618 laws. And so, but he himself, before the destruction of the temple, he kept the laws. And if you look at Timothy, he forced Timothy at an adult age to circumcise because Timothy was also a Jew. And this is something that the Christians didn't understand, the Romans and the Greeks didn't understand because it's not their culture. They don't understand, they misunderstand Paul. And there's also something very important, and that is that Paul was the student of um, a very high ranking judge, a Jew. And it's only mentioned in the Bible once, and there is nothing that you can read about it further than that. And later on, you see that he becomes a tent maker because, well, he now is a Christian. Let's, by the way, he never calls himself a Christian, never. He calls himself Jew. He keeps calling himself a Jew. Um, because a Christian was a slur, was a Roman slur, those Christians, right? That's what they call, because they call themselves the Nazarenes and also the people of the way. They didn't call themselves Christians. It was the Romans, just like the Romans that came up with the slur Palestinian. It's the same thing. But eventually it grew into an identity and they accepted that. And later in the Bible, you see that there's mention of Christian. It's just one time or two times it's mentioned, but it's not mentioned by Paul. So what happened is that Paul is now greatly understood to be a tent maker, but not what he did before he had a encounter with Jesus and he was blinded and everything. Not before that, but because before that he was actually a district attorney. He was a prosecutor. He he had that's why he writes so complex. He writes as like a philosopher because he was a very high thinker. If you look at the way this man writes, it's
Hmm.
fascinating. The way he thinks is absolutely fascinating. This is not a tent maker alone. He had the
Well, he
right now
just
he
did that for money. Yeah, that's all.
Yes, he did that eventually because he was traveling and evangelizing. So he
Yeah.
wanted to, of course, work and make his own money, and he was an honorable man, so he
Yeah,
did that.
he was.
So this is
I mean,
all
and
misunderstandings, theological misunderstandings that created this dichotomy between Moses and Jesus. What does Jesus say? He literally says, "I do not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it." What? Fulfill what? If you don't bring anything new, then you're talking about the prophecies. He came to fulfill the prophecies, not all of them, because he will come back one more time, according to the Christian idea. But that's what he meant. The only thing that he brought that is new, that's one thing. Literally every other thing is repeating what let's say, if you believe that he is God, that he told Moses, if you believe that he is the Trinity, is the Godhead, then he was the Godhead speaking to Moses, right? So the only thing that was new that he repeated, yeah, sorry, that was something new that he brought and not repeated, was love everyone. So love your God with all your might, heart, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he even pointed out to your enemies. That's a new thing that he brought, which was, and then, but there are also verses he says, take your sword, go sell everything and then and have a sword. So it's like, if you want to
yeah.
look at what happened to the Romans and why they were so weak, is because back then this was the prevalent ideology that you need to sacrifice yourself, but you cannot sacrifice your family. That's cowardice. You cannot sacrifice your nation. That's cowardice. That's stupidity. But that's the stupidity that they believe for a very long time. And the time and then you have enemies like the Muslims who believe that it's holy to do jihad. It's you have to do jihad 2 times in a year. That's something that you need to do if you have the power. So it's like a law from Allah. So you have a people who believe that jihad is holy, and then you have a people who believe that sacrificing your life if they want to come and kill you is holy. So yeah, it's actually right that the Romans were
It's
weakened by this.
I mean, I understand, yeah, what you're saying, yeah, and these things are complex, but it definitely was a challenge, yeah, to the thinking. And to me, you got to think about too, like the cultural context of when these things were said, because these were new ideas, of course, too, right? And of course, this all revolves around the identity of Jesus Christ. Who was he? Who is he? All these types of questions. And to me, everything is multifaceted and layered, and what affects one doesn't affect another, and so on and so forth. And yeah, like I mean, it. I understand things
The
very differently now.
military aspect of, if you look at the Jews right now, Jews have literally laws that tells them that if someone wants to come and kill you, you have to kill them first. We don't have that in Christianity.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, we had obviously there was people in Christianity too that fought in the Crusades, as a result of
but that
like
was
these.
as a
That's
result
right.
to jihad.
Yeah.
It wasn't a Christian thing. It was 400
Yeah.
years. The jihadis killed, raped, and took over as a result. Charlemagne, for instance, he was literally
Yeah.
created as a result of Islam, and not as a result of the idea
Yeah.
of theology of the Christians back then. Because it was that's why the Christians now very easily can wash their hands and say, "But that's not Christianity." Yeah, that's not the Christianity you believe in, but that is more
Hmm.
uh, according
Yeah.
to human courage and honor. You are honorable when you protect your country. And you need to be very, very harsh against your enemies when they come. Like that's why, uh, in my journey, my own faith journey, eventually, because I was also for years a Christian, and I was always answered in the same manner if I asked anything personal about what if someone is toxic, what if someone does evil. Well, pray for them. Turn the other cheek. Basically, that's what I always consistently heard, and it never made sense to me. I was always like, why? Why should I turn my other cheek when someone wants to hurt me? Why not walk away from them, for instance, and allow them to sit in their own misery and not communicate with them anymore until they were respectful? Or why not, when it comes to like all these concepts of military, also protect because you have the duty to protect. I always heard the same sort of line of answers. You have to pray for them. God knows best. And this is not what you
See,
read in the
that's
Bible.
yeah. I mean, I don't know why people are telling you these things, but I mean, yes, praying for them is good, but just what I don't like about certain lines of Christian thinking is everything that they don't know, they always attribute to a statement of faith, right? So, sometimes, I mean, that works for them, I guess. That's how they get through life, but it doesn't absolve, yeah,
That's how you
fatalism.
lose. This is how you lose your country by pacifism.
Sure. Yeah, you cannot be that way in leadership roles. No, absolutely not. And to me, that's not even,
But
I don't even
who
think
was like that in the Bible, though? Was Joshua like that? Was Samson like that? Was
of
the
course not.
God of the
Yeah, no. I
Bible?
mean that
Was the
no.
God of the Bible like that? No, he was a
You
freaking warrior. He was
yeah,
like
I mean,
he took
mind
nations out
you,
like Sodom and Gomorrah and so on and so forth. Like he was. That's why a lot of people find him hard, yani immoral even because of what happened in
no.
Canaan, for instance. So we don't even yani people who don't believe in Christianity is most yani a lot of them is because they read the Torah and they say like how could he then order sort of like a genocide what happened in Canaan, right? When the Israelites went to the promised land, they were literally demanded to take out the Canaanites. So it's like that's not the heart of this God. That pacifism is not something you read. That's why this theologian came up with this whole New Testament, because he said the Old Testament, the God of the Jews is a violent God, but we are not violent. Do you understand? So this whole thing is
Yeah.
just a dichotomy created
I
by a
don't
bunch of
yeah, I
thinkers.
mean I have a different point of view, than most. Like I would call myself somewhat like Judeo-Christian. But I certainly don't ascribe to this pacifist position. I think that's absolute garbage, to be honest. Because you have a moral. Let me simplify. You always have to simplify things for people because they just don't understand like the concepts, right? It's like if like I don't know, like just say someone you're walking out with your family and you have your couple kids with you, and you see someone attack your children or some wild animal or whatever, right? I mean,
Right.
you're not going to just turn the other cheek and not do anything, right?
No,
Because you're going to
it
say
would be
that
immoral to do
it
that.
would it's a perversion of like it's justifying your
Exactly.
cowardice. That would be
Exactly.
justifying your cowardice and your unwillingness to act.
And
And
it's
that
also
puts,
counter-human. I mean, like,
of
if
course,
some,
yeah.
God forbid,
But
someone
like,
will hurt your children, it's
yeah,
counter-human for you to sit and not do anything. You will, I think, have a
you know,
reflex. Even your body will have a reflex.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, no, yeah. Okay. We're gonna have to move on from this, but yeah, we can. This is a whole other rabbit hole in and of itself. But no, I believe in taking. You always have to look at it like, I mean, how you run your own household and your family is a reflection of how you would run your kingdom, is the way I see it. It's a mini version of the kingdom you would run. You know, how you treat your wife, how you treat your daughter. I mean, so on and so forth, right? How you manage your finances, like all these things, it's an interesting way of actually looking at it. It's like a mini kingdom. It's someone's mini kingdom. It's the way I look at it. But yeah, I mean, like yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that for now, right? But let's go on
Let's go
to
to the Hitler thing, and then
yeah. Well, we're yeah. There's a bunch here we actually have already covered, but we'll yeah, we definitely want to cover the story behind Hitler's use of Arianism. Yeah, that's back up to like our points, right? This was it struck me like nothing else, right? Like how he like the wheel of Mitra, right? And then how he basically transmuted like the wheel of Mitra into the swastika. Because I'd never heard about that before until I had a conversation with you because I thought it had East Indian origins. I know they've used the symbol, but I didn't realize it originated with the Aryans or Iranians. So, and then of course with the whole like rise of Nazism again, right? You're starting to see all this stuff again, the Jew hatred, the Nazi flags and all this stuff. All the it just I don't know, it's a revival, right? Like actually it reminds me of Stu Peters, and in his movie Occupied 2, he actually quoted Hitler about that whole Nazi revival and that the world would see that Hitler was right. I mean, how can you make a statement like that, right? I mean, I just think it's an abomination. And we live in a country now where like freedom to me has reached, it really has like tested its limits, and it's going to be interesting where the lines are drawn because everyone that's censored is going to cry, "Oh my God, I got censored," right? But when you start calling for like the genocide of a specific group of people, and you're producing content that's actually aimed at pure hatred towards a group of people, broad stroking hatred. It's sort of like if I create a movie about Justin Trudeau, and the aim of my movie is to spread it out to the world to create absolute hatred towards every Canadian out there. Would you not say that that's a crime? I would say that it is. You know, because it's a broad it's a digital tactic, in the sixth generation warfare, if I can call it that, for the battle of the minds, right? Because it's you know what, Ariana, I'm gonna let you speak because every question, yeah, it's we could go so deep into all these things, but yeah, let's keep it to the Wheel of Mitra and Arianism and what did Hitler do with that, and tie that in a little bit too with Grand Mufti in Jerusalem and Hitler's relationship with that guy.
uh, sure. It's actually very tragic because the view of Mitra, as like obviously they don't call the wheel of Mitra. Hitler calls it the swastika, but the wheel of Mitra, what it was, it represents cosmic time. So basically, the cycle of days, seasons, and ages, Mitras govern this movement, ensuring it remains aligned with Aisha, and Aisha means truth. So basically, they had this idea that you have this cycle of time, and um, in this time you have all these constellations, and when they move, so the stars and the moon and everything, the planets, how they are opposing each other and in contrast to each other, that basically affects human life. That in those times they thought, and maybe scientifically that's what they thought, how your life is defined. So uh, the whole idea is that Mitra was a deity who turned the wheel of Mitra, who turned the wheel of time. So he literally uh, freed the people from the effects of the wheel of, the effects of the constellations that they were under. So it's not that you're ruled by determinism anymore, but you have free will and you have the responsibility also towards that free will to uphold the oath, do not betray it, and to speak truth and not roots, which is lies. That is what Mitra did for humanity. It's basically a metaphoric thing. It's basically also what the Greeks also have in another story, Prometheus, where Prometheus steals the lights from the god and then brings it to the people, and then he's forever punished for that. So it's basically about accountability. So it's a symbol of accountability. Just imagine how distorted it got.
Mhm.
And then when Hitler came, Hitler had an issue um, with Christianity as it was. The whole story that I just told you, that was basically also the trap that Hitler fell into. Hitler was he was a man who came from a household of a very aggressive father who never basically loved him or
Function may be
affirmed him.
impossible to ignore.
Sorry?
Forgive me. Carry on.
Oh, yeah. So he came from a household of a very aggressive father who was very harsh to him, never affirmed him, basically said that you will be a nobody. He came from a household of Catholics, from a mom who was also controlling and didn't also, yeah, she loved him a lot, but she didn't affirm him as an individual. And he went through his own struggles in life. Like he wanted to become a painter, for instance. He wanted to go to the university to become a painter, and officially rejected because he was not able to see layers. He could only, for instance, copy a poster picture of like a building, but he could not draw faces because he didn't have that ability to see through layers. So they rejected him, and all these rejections felt really bad to him. And instead of dealing with his own ego, he started to point out to others and how the others, the Jews, were stealing all the jobs, and the Jews were
Mm.
the cause, of all his misery. So
Yeah,
it
yeah, a
started.
lot of
It
people are
started
doing that today. Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's always yeah, they're it's strange, isn't it? But carry on. Yeah. Yeah.
it's strange, but it's something. If you look at the Bible, for instance, with the whole story with Cain and Abel, it's actually the same thing, right? I mean, Cain and Abel, it's like, so you have the story with God where he wants the best from them, the best of their love that they have inside of them, and one gives the best and the other doesn't, tries to cheat out God, and in as a result, the one who is cheating gets angry at, like, it's because of my brother, it's because of him. It points out to the another for his own mistakes. So that's the same thing. I mean, like, okay, you
That's a
can't
great
paint
analogy. Yeah. That's a great yeah. That's
as.
well said.
So yeah, so it's like the same human thing. You could point to another and say it's because of the other, or you can go deeper in and say, hey, why is life so hard? Why can't I do this? And that's what Hitler obviously did not do. So eventually, he is called to go to fight for the war that was started, and then he escapes that and he runs away from his duty, and then eventually he does go to war, and then in that period of time he's hardened as well, but then he finds a bunch of people who are also soldiers to convince them about these ideas about the Jews. He starts influencing people. That's where his influence starts, and of course he loves it because that's the first time he is experiencing power or whatever control. And he was also not very good looking, and so the ladies were not really into him. Yeah, and if you look at his facial expressions and any features, I mean, sorry, you see that like he was not like the jawline and his skin, yeah, and the chin and all these things. It's not a typical beautiful man or something. So he was also very shy when it comes to women, and also he rejected by a lot of women. So all of that played into this character that when he was there. And a bunch of soldiers said amen to what he said. He loved it. He liked the power, right?
Mhm.
And so eventually when he came in this whole period that he was still not in power, he needed the Christians and stuff. He was kind to the Christians, he fooled the Christians and stuff, but he continuously had critique to the Christian God. Literally, he literally called it a weak God, a God that is not equipped to protect and or build strong characters, strong people. And that is exactly the sort of Christianity I was talking about with you earlier. It's something that yeah, it's not all of Christianity. Of course, Christianity has so much layers and there's so much beauty in it, self-reflection, love for others. It's not just one component, but there is this component of uh sort of like you are the whole sin nature thing. You are a sinner, you're born with sin, and you have to apologize for your sin, and you continuously are sort of like excusing yourself and your sin. And if you are humble enough and you walk with God and you change your sin, or you walk with God, God can change you. You can't even. And those are the things that he also sort of like read, and in his state of ego that he was in, he just didn't like it. Later on, um, when he actually got power and he came up with this whole bullshit ideology of his Nazi ideology, he indeed took the wheel of Mitra that he did not understand, knew nothing about, but he didn't do that in a vacuum. It actually started with Nietzsche. Nietzsche and his Thus Says Zarathustra obviously was a philosopher. He was a thinker, and he started reading Zarathustra, and that's where Zoroastrianism comes from. So Zarathustra was a philosopher, and he has read some of the Gathas, and he starts looking within, and he's a very intellectual man. He was talking about the Übermensch, never about the Untermensch. He only spoke about the Übermensch, and the Übermensch, in his philosophical setting, meant someone who can basically conquer their ego and become progressive in a sense of like you become the highest form of yourself. You become strong, you believe in yourself, and you start furthering science, and you start furthering your environment. That's what he meant. That's what Nietzsche meant method. But eventually he got very ill, like they call him yani, all sorts of names for it. I don't want to stigmatize mental issues, but anyways, he had sort of like a schizophrenia kind of thing going on in the end time of his life. So he was totally dependent, or he couldn't even talk anymore, totally dependent on his sister. And his sister also was someone who was never seen in the family, because basically all the power went to the boy and the man, and his yeah, her brother was like literally praised as Nietzsche, one of the intellectuals of the time. So was her golden time to start doing her manipulations. So she was extremely into Nazism, yani into killing the Jews and the whole bullshit that Googles and Hitler were talking about back then. Yani they were talking about killing the Jews. By the way, they were talking about expelling the Jews, but Jew hatred, right? So she started manipulating her brother's writings even when he was still alive and couldn't do it. And he couldn't do anything. He didn't even know. He didn't know about these things. So she basically started manipulating his teachings and his writings, and that's what Hitler took over. Hitler copied from that version that she manipulated, and this whole Nazism was born, yani as an ideology. And and then he used Aryanism because Aryans basically are Iranians. Iran literally means the land of the Aryans, and it's something. It's a name that they give themselves like millennia ago. It has nothing to do with Hitler. It has to do with a philosophy of being noble and acting noble, and that is attached to ethics, and that was attached to Iranian ethics. Aryan ethics means like Mitraism and later on Zoroastrianism. It had literally nothing to do with colorism, but Hitler turned it into a segregational apartheidist colorist ideology, which was totally the opposite of what it actually was in reality and is still in reality, the philosophy of it. So he distorted it, and then he, as a German, and he was not an Aryan, he was a German, because an Aryan and a German have different DNA. If you look at Aryan DNA, because if you do a DNA, I did a DNA test, for instance, I have Aryan DNA because I'm from Iran. And the Aryan stuff, I explained this in that last interview we had. The Aryans started in modern day Ukraine, and then they went to motherland Iran right now. They migrated because of the ice age, because of the cold. And so it's just a group of people. It's not they're not more special. It has nothing to do with being more special or something. And later they had a philosophy, which I just told you about a little, but it is of course more it has so many ideas to it that I'm not explaining or unfolding right now. But this is basically to sum it up what happened. So
Mhm.
yeah,
And basically, the Wheel of Mitra is sort of constellations, isn't it? Going about Polaris? Am I right with that?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, like because Polaris is a fixed point, right? From our perspective
Yeah.
on Earth
It's
here, right? So,
we
yeah,
call it sort of like we have the sort of 12 zodiac signs, and
right.
within Iranian context was it symbolizes the cosmic guardians, and they had their seasonal gates governed by Mitra. So it's a whole um, sort of cosmological idea behind it, which has
Hmm.
nothing to do with the Jews, nothing to do with colorism, nothing, and nothing to do with apartheid and segregation. And the opposite has to do with controlling your ego, is with being responsible and being free from determinism. That is the biggest thing. Because before that, people were uh, you know, just literally at the gods decided everything. There was no morality or something.
Hmm.
There was just the power of the gods, and they had the power to say that you were blessed or that you should die. That was what it was. We didn't have such a thing as objective morality or something. And after this, we create the sort of like the Iranians had these ideas of what ethics was, and it was based on truth and lies. So when you tell the
Hmm.
truth and you're walking the walk of ethics, it wasn't called morality, but ethics. And the other, if you are,
Well, I mean,
well,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Well, that's
basically,
good. It's interesting.
in a nutshell, indeed, it was like a solar justice, if you will. So the view
Hmm.
echoes the solar
Well,
chariot of Mitra that illuminates and exposes, burning away deceit. That's basically how you should see it.
yeah,
So
it's
yeah.
good. I like that. Yeah. Well, okay. Um, Also touch on the Grand Mufti
Oh yeah.
of
I
Jerusalem
forgot
just a
that.
little bit. Yeah, just I know there was a relationship there, and
Yeah, it's very a
again,
very important relationship. It shaped history.
yeah, it
So
did.
the Grand Mufti, I don't even want to grant him that name. The
Well, whatever.
Mufti,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
idiot um in Jerusalem, who lived in Jerusalem. I wouldn't even call him of Jerusalem because he was an Arab, he was not a Jew. Anyways, this idiot, he was a puppet of the Anglos before, and because in the time of the Ottomans, he was basically treated well by the Ottomans. He even had power. That's why he was, there as a sort of some sort of like cleric. And but the Anglos came and called him the Grand Mufti. Yeah, that's what they always do. They call him the Grand Mufti, and they give him these powers so that he would help again the Anglos defeat the Ottomans. So that was the first that was the first thing he did against his own Islamic brothers. And later, when Hitler came in power, Hitler was not planning to kill the Jews. Hitler hated the Jews. He wanted them expelled from Germany. He wanted them out. He just didn't want any Jews in his country, which was horrible. But he never planned. The whole final solution is something that this Grand Mufti idiot moron came up with. He literally advised, and this is a time that Hitler also went into Islam, and he handed out pamphlets about jihad and about women, and it can go into that how Hitler also thought it was really uh, sort of like motivational to tell his soldiers that if you win in war or you commit all these atrocities, at least you will have all these women later. You can, do all sorts of things with sexually. So he thought it was very good, and he promoted that idea. He went against the Christian ethic all the time in the end, saying that why should we wait for marriage, and my soldiers need to have the right to do this and that. So he was going against Christianity, and he started praising Allah. And that was in that time that he met this Mufti moron. And this Mufti
Hitler,
moron,
Hitler, Hitler was praising Allah, is what you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah, there are recordings of him saying that if there is one
Really?
God, yeah, he
I
went.
did not. I mean, I just want to reiterate that. So yeah, you're saying that Hitler was actually heard saying he was praising Allah.
Yeah, it's not only him, also his closest people wrote about it, and
Okay.
he
Yeah,
himself
that's
wrote.
key. That's key to understand because that's very important for people to understand what this rise of Islam and the jihadists and the Nazis and it's like it's all like, they're all linked together, right?
Yeah, it's actually, but it's interesting how a lot of Jews, they don't do it this much anymore. They don't say these things this much, but in the beginning, they literally say, uh, as if like, they turn it around. They say that the Muslims are now acting like the Nazis, not knowing that it was the Muslims who literally were teaching, uh, yeah, Hitler himself how to not expel them, but to murder them, because that's
Yeah.
the Islamic ideology, is to murder. That's the command of Allah to actually. There's a hadith that says, in the end, even the stones will testify. There's a Jew here, come murder the Jew, right? So it's seen as one of the biggest commands, the most
Yeah.
valuable commands of Allah that you can do. If you have ghairah, as they say, if you have
Hmm.
courage, if you have zeal, you do what Allah wants, and that is the only way that the promise of the hereafter is secured for someone who actually does jihad. So that's what Hitler also eventually he I can show you his statements eventually. I don't have it here
Well,
with me right
did
now, but
he did he convert? Did he convert to Islam or
no, I
he
don't
did
think
not?
he converted because he came up with Nazism. And Nazism is also an ideology that was his
Okay.
sort of like.
But he was
So
definitely okay, so he
yeah, he
did
said
give lip
if there is
service to
he literally said if there is a God worthy of respect, that is Allah. I only respect Allah. Yeah, there is. Let me just find that quote for you so I can quote it
Oh, that's good.
directly.
Yeah, we'll add that because that's key in my with what I'm doing. Yeah, that's
So you don't.
important. Yeah, yeah, you can send it over later. It's fine. Um, yeah, because also okay, let's we're gonna have to wrap this up, but I know with the last remaining questions here, I had a question about, the fall of the Ottoman Empire. You touched on that a little bit, right? And how that kind of led to chaos in the Middle East because they were the ruling power in the region, right, for such a long period of time. And then, you touched on a little bit of how these I'm going to say Anglo-sponsored states were all created, over a period of time, which is really interesting, actually, hearing it from your point of view and your understanding all these events. We covered a little bit on that, and of course, number 12 too about you touched on that. Um,
I just found that one of the statements that Hitler said, this is paraphrasing him, he said, the German peoples would have been better off with Islam than Christianity. Islam is a manly religion, promising warriors paradise. Christianity is
yeah.
weak, flabby.
See, yes, send me that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you
And
know
there is
what?
and there is and there is more where that come from.
And
So
let me speak to that a little bit because it's interesting that Hitler was rejected as an artist because he couldn't see the layering. And see, I think that that's key with how he understood Christianity too, because Christianity is not weak. It seems that way to I would say someone that doesn't actually really understand what happened. Because to me, there is no division between uh, well, there's an old covenant and a new covenant. But see, that was the power of what was done. And in my view, Jesus was the ultimate undercover boss. But in such a way, because it's like me. If I was a king and I had all this power and glory and if I showed all that, of course the people are gonna submit and tremble in fear and all that stuff. But it's
yeah.
like basically, yeah, leaving all that and then the people not knowing. It's like a special secret visitation. But of course, that's why, of course, in the Christian eschatology too is the second coming, right? But that's coming back in power, glory, and it's a totally different thing. But yeah, anyway, those are that was good. I like that because yeah, Hitler's connection to Islam is an interesting one to say the least. And what I've noticed about a lot of the people that are the big Jew haters of today on social media, right? Like they don't say anything about the jihadists, right, in Islam. It's very interesting. Nothing, like for the most part, they won't say anything. Nothing. Even though like you listen to what these leaders are saying, and to me that they know what they're saying too, right? And there's an alignment. So to me, and there's an agreement, an unspoken agreement, with a lot of these people. It's very interesting. Almost exactly like I would say in alignment with what Hitler audibly spoke, but you see that today too. It doesn't matter what what's going on in America, like in terms of they're all so worried about the Zionist take over America, and
Yeah,
yet they
it's
turn the complete
insane.
blind. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It's insane. And when I hear
It is
these people
insane. It's
talking,
it's
because
well, it's not
the
fair,
Jews,
is it?
the
Like, I
Jews
mean,
can't, the Jews can't even have that little piece of land that is as small as New
yeah,
Jersey for themselves. What colonized, and the rest of the world is literally under the hands of the Arabs and the Muslims right now, and even the West is literally being infiltrated by Islam, left, right, and center, and they're still talking about some delusional idea about the Jews taking over the world. I'm like, what is wrong with
well,
your cognitive abilities? And do you
mhm.
even hear yourself? Do you have eyes? Can you look around you? And who do you see? Is your neighbor Jew? No, your neighbor is probably a Muslim. So it's just
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly. Well, I
But,
mean,
but
yeah, I mean, it's like in every nation of the world, there are good and there are evil people. In every nation in the world, right?
obviously,
But with the people that yes, of course, right? The people that absolutely hate Israel and hate the Jews, they always blame the Jews for everything. I mean, it's like they'll turn a blind eye to like everything else, but everything somehow in their worldview comes back down to, Israel and the Jews, right? It's no one else's fault but them.
when
But
I get
anyway,
angry, I have the feeling like I don't give a beep about your obsession with the Jews. I give a, I care about my own,
yeah,
society and
yeah.
life, and that has nothing to do with Jews and everything to do with Islam. So you go obsess about the Jews while we do something about the invasion, the Islamic invasion, and
Well,
you
there
can
is an
thank
Islamic
us.
invasion. Yeah. I mean,
We
yeah,
can thank us later while you're still
yeah.
obsessed. I have people in my Telegram group who for years are obsessing about the Jew. They have nothing else to say
Yeah,
Literally, that's nothing else to say than
yeah,
each time come to me and say, look what the Jew did there. Yes, of course, you can always find a
I
Jew doing
know.
something. If you go to America and you want to find, what Americans do, and your mind is fixed on that, you can always find criminals
Yeah,
who do stuff. But what is it to me? I don't care what the Jews reactionally do or what they do, how many criminals they have in Israel. You have them literally everywhere, but globally we're being taken over by this Islamic ideology, and
yeah,
also because they have the oil money, they're sponsoring it. They're sponsoring all
yeah,
of this. By the way,
100%.
back to Hitler, the quote he literally says that I found. He literally says, "The only religion I respect," and I quote right now, "the only religion I respect is Islam. The only prophet I admire is the prophet Muhammad." Out of Hitler. This is one of his quotes from Barclay. Let me just see from which book is this? Yeah, Barclay say April June 2002. It's
Yeah,
in
send it on
his
over.
book
We'll add
of
it.
yeah. So these are,
Yeah, I mean,
and by the way, the Mufti. So eventually, what happened with the Mufti to finish that and to go with the fall of Empire, Ottoman Empire, the Mufti literally advised Hitler to burn the Jews because he wanted to send them to Israel. He wanted to, because that's where they came from, and no one wanted to go there because it was barren land. No one was built, even when it was under the Ottoman Empire. They didn't give a beep about that area because it was basically desert area. It didn't have much. So if you were from that place, you were pretty poor. Poor people lived in that place, right? So
yeah,
back then Germany was of course very advanced. I mean, living in Germany was something else, so he wanted to send all of these Jews who helped build also, of course, but he wanted to send them away to that land. He didn't give anything about them. He just wanted them gone. But the Mufti who lived in Jerusalem himself, and for the first time after the fall of the empire was by the Anglos lifted to the Mufti of Jerusalem, he wanted to rule Jerusalem because these people they don't win it; they always get it from the Anglos or from other alpha men because they are the betas because they don't work, they don't think, they are not builders, they just there. Offering the sort of alpha thinker. I'll do your I'll do your war for you. I'll die for you. So if you eventually I help defeat this person and that person and then give me
hmm,
land. That's how it goes because they don't have anything else to offer. So basically he advised Hitler to burn the Jews, and the final solution was this, basically inspired by this mufti, by this moron. And most people think it's the other way around. They think that the Muslims right now are indoctrinated with Nazism, but they don't know that Hitler was indoctrinated by Islam. It's
yeah,
just
no, it
crazy.
definitely, yeah, you can see that just by reading that quote. I mean, that's your evidence. I mean, I mean, you don't need any more than that. I mean, that's what the guy's saying, and I mean, he operated a lot like I guess he created his own form of jihadism, right? You know, his Nazism. It's just an offshoot with stealing the wheel of Mitra or whatever. I don't know. Everyone does
That
that,
is
right?
a
We're all
sign. That's a sign, just simply a sign. And he went with
yeah,
the name because he actually hated the Arabs because he was a colorist. He didn't like Africans. He didn't like Arabs
right,
because
yeah.
dark
No, he
skins.
didn't. Yeah,
He is also interesting. There is somewhere in in his writings he says they say that he didn't ever give a hand to the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem because he was an Arab. He didn't like Arabs. He just saw them as useful idiots who would die for him, right? Who would do his work, his bidding. But he didn't see them as obviously the Aryans. He thought the Aryans were the Germans. Yani he called what he meant with Aryan was blue eyes and blonde hair. That's what he meant with Aryan. So that's the only people he respected. So yeah, it's literally very disgusting. But uh,
well,
compared to Islam, Nazism has less Jew hatred, and that is an achievement.
yeah, for sure. Okay, well, Ariana, I know I really kind of want to just jump down to the final question. Basically, there's a few more here left, but just the core
Yeah,
message you
it's
want to leave. Well, we did touch on the others. The Persian Gulf we touched on. We did touched on that in the beginning, between the Persian Gulf and renaming it the Arabian Gulf. We touched on that. Um,
I
and we
think we
did,
even handled sort of like the I can go into it if you want to, but what happened with the fall of the Ottoman Empire. But
yeah, we
I
did.
think
Yeah,
we
I feel like
greatly
that
also
was
we
good.
didn't go into the details because there are some details like like the Arab revolt and all these stuff. We can go one by one if you want, but it's not really necessary for the story anymore. I think the people will get the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I think we're almost coming up on 3 hours too, and I think that's good enough. But
Wow.
like, well, it's somewhere close to that. I haven't checked, but just what core message? Let's go right down to number 15. Um, like, just give a summary. Like, what's the core message you want people to walk away with after, hearing this lecture? I mean, just a quick summary. Anything you want to quickly add, right? Just to wrap it all up here, right? But I mean, I think at the end of the day, what I get from it, you can clearly see the Islamo-Nazi ties. The ideology is clearly, religious dictatorship that's clearly infiltrated the West. And, the question like the West has to ask themselves is like, do we want this? I say no. You got Mark Carney here, or the new, I call it circus show prime minister here in Canada. I mean, he's talking about how all these Islamic values are Canadian values, and I completely disagree with that. No, absolutely not. Of course, all you get from liberals, right? Like here is just they're always pandering, always doing the cowardly thing, destroying like traditional Canadian culture. It's yeah, if there's a globalist state, like it's here. It's like Justin Trudeau said about 10
Yeah.
years ago. There's no core identity, no mainstream, first post national state. That's what Trudeau said. Justin Trudeau said that about
Yeah, you
Canada
told
about 10
me.
years ago. That's what it is. Yeah, that's what Canada has become. Now, it's not what I am, but it overall, the government's thinking and their mentality, that's exactly what it is. So again, yeah, what's your summary? What's your final closing thoughts? And then we'll wrap this up.
Right. So I would say, so civilizations don't just fall. They are sabotaged from within, hijacked by false prophets, and then buried under layers of lies, then rebranded by those who couldn't build, only conquer. So Islam didn't rise because of spiritual brilliance. It rose because the world's greatest civilizations were weakened by betrayal, internal decay, and stolen theology. From Iran to Rome, from Judea to actually Babylon. So the so-called Arab Islamic Golden Age, yeah, Persian reigns, Jewish ethics, Syriac mysticism under a Arab rap. So what we're seeing today, the renaming of the Persian Gulf, the rewriting of Iranian and Jewish history, the glorification of Arab empires is not a cultural pride, it's a post-colonial cosplay, trying to bury the truth in oil. I would say, but truth, actual truth, always has roots. And the roots of civilization, morality, cosmic justice, or philosophy, science, and dignity from the ancient times was literally by the Aryans and the Romans, right? And then later by the Christians who also advanced um, all these good thoughts and good deeds and science also because of their ideas. Because, for instance, the Christians thought there's a God, so there is also a mechanism that he would put forward, and we can try to understand that. And that's how the universities came about in the West because of these ideas, because of these Christian ideas.
Yeah.
And so we can reclaim it. We don't just correct the record, we reclaim the future by understanding who we were and what we brought to this world. And instead of bowing down to a bunch of Arabs just because they have money that they have stolen from the Persians, and the buildings that is built for them by the French and the Anglos and the Canadians and so on and so forth. And we cannot bend for money like that. We shouldn't. We should reclaim our philosophy, our science, our dignity, our biblical or Zoroastrian roots, and stand for them, because that's the only way you can also influence your youth and your society to understand where all of this goods, all what we have right now, all the science that we see around us is created by the hardworking world, not by the Arabs. So yeah, I would
That's
say my
yeah.
final words would be we should reclaim the future. Why not
Mhm.
sitting by and thinking, okay, the Arabs have a bunch of buildings and therefore I'm gonna from now on have alliance with Arabs. No, when the Arabs want to have actual alliance with us, they need to step away from all this misogyny. They need to step away from all this Jew hatred. They need to step away from Christian hatred. They need to stop murdering Christians left, right, and center everywhere. For instance, in Africa, for now, it's like genocide
Yeah.
on genocide. So we should just not be ashamed. We should be
Well,
proud of what we had.
yeah, like well said. And it's about identifying like the threat for what it is. And I see this jihadist invasion, if you will, as a threat, and I also see the leftists as a threat to the West. I mean, it's they go hand in hand because they are the facilitators of what's happening here because it's like people do see what's going on, and it's just you got these people on the far left side that are just it's like they're the embodiment of the spoiled state of the West. And it's like there needs to be a correction. Leadership needs to start identifying like the problems for what they really are. But it's again it's gone. This has gone on for so long, and it's like no one is well, I shouldn't say no one, but very few people are willing to take like a sacrificial leadership position to start righting the ship, if you will. You will be attacked. Some people, yeah, may lose their lives, but it's like you need to see a rise of people that are willing to give their lives. That's one thing I can somewhat respect
But
about
you
some of
don't
my
have
enemies.
to necessarily right now give up your lives. We are not at a stage where we don't
No,
have to give up our lives yet. What we have to do is to say no to ideologies that are toxic
yeah.
and stop being so
Well,
stupid and say
stop being a coward though, too, right?
any moral relativism. That's what the whole point here is. We say we cannot claim that something is true. In the West, the biggest thing that you can say that is a taboo is I have the truth. And you should not say that because that's arrogant. And yet the Muslims are saying that and thinking that.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah.
their ideology is taking over. So we should just say no to Islam, and I think we should declare Islam as even worse than Nazism because they have done a study on it, and they say I think Nazism has 8% Jew hatred and Islam has 13% Jew hatred. It has more Jew
Yeah.
hatred. So why have we banned Nazism and allow Islam, that is literally a conquest ideology, to be openly
Because
practiced? So
yeah, because
we
they're
should
they're
ban Islam.
always yeah. To me, they're
That's what
always
we don't have
lying.
to give lives. We could ban Islam. Like that's what we can do. And we can do that legally if we look at the content of it. Because it's
Yeah.
absolute hatred towards women. It's literally
Hmm.
disgusting. So, and it's not just women alone, it's Jews, it's Christians, it's pedophilia, it's this, is that. So, if you want to save the West, you have to attack Islam. We need to learn to attack. We need to stop only
Oh
defending
yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, yeah, you see the threat and then yeah, you got to take action, yeah, for sure. Well, you know what, Ariana, this was an excellent conversation. I'm sure we'll I mean, I know you could talk for another 10 hours on every question, but yeah, we're gonna wrap it up for
I'm a
today.
human being, I also need water and
Yeah,
sleep.
exactly, right? No, we need a break, man. We've been going
Yeah.
strong, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the conversation. And
You too. Thank you for your
yeah,
great
thanks very much.
questions
And
and also for your feedback. And of course,
of
again,
course,
for the
yeah,
platform.
yeah. No, I mean, it was an excellent, it's like a university lecture, open conversation. But yeah, I appreciate your thoughts on this, and it really helps the education, right? Because the battle first starts in the mind. So thanks very much, Ariyanâ, and you have a good night. Take care. Oh, last
Oh,
thing, people can find you on Telegram, right? If people want to reach out to you, where do you want people to go to if they're interested in reaching out to you?
yeah, in Telegram it would be best because that's where I share the most.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So Telegram it is. We'll drop that handle in the write-up. Okay, thanks, Ariyanâ. Appreciate everything you do. Thanks very much.
you too.